Welcome in, everyone. Good morning. We'll give just a moment here for some more to keep on coming in, but welcome to Drinking Water Rule Review Part 2. We'll be beginning here in just a minute. Well, once again, good morning, everyone. My name is Bram. We will go ahead and get the webinar going here. Glad to have you for our Part 2 of our Drinking Water Rule Review webinar series. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into our first presenter. Again, for all of you operators, this is a webinar available for PDHs. You'll be able to get 4 professional development hours today. Just make sure you keep the agenda in the handouts section of GoToWebinar. You should be able to download today's agenda, which you can upload to your OffCert portal for those 4 PDHs. The PowerPoint slides aren't currently in the handout section, but we'll make sure to get the agenda and the slides out to you via a share file, so you'll be able to review all of the slides that you see presented today on your own time. All webcams are disabled, all attendees are muted, but if you do have questions at any point during the webinar, you can go ahead and use the questions feature. It's a little drop-down tab here on GoToWebinar. You can type your questions there, and the presenters or one of our moderators will go ahead and answer you either right in the questions box or live during some of these presentations. This webinar is being recorded. It will be uploaded to the ADEQ YouTube channel for later review at a later date. Just as a reminder for you operators, those YouTube webinars are available for up to 10 PDHs during your recertification period. So definitely check out the ADEQ YouTube channel. And of course, if you do have any questions for the operator certification program, whether about this webinar or anything else, you can email us or call us, and both of those are right there on the screen for you. Before we get started with Ebony, I have a couple poll questions for you, so I will send these your way. First question for our attendees here today: what is your highest certification grade of any class, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, or not available, not applicable for any who are not certification holders today? Awesome. Give you just one more second here. Perfect. I will close this poll now. Looks like we got a good mix of operators in here, lots of grade 1s and lots of grade 4s. It's great to see both of those coming in, and those of you who are more old timers to the certifications, glad to have you all here today. Next poll question: what classifications of certifications do you hold? Primarily water, wastewater, a little of both, or again, not applicable? Maybe just 5 more seconds here to answer. Looks like we got majority of the votes in. Perfect. Lots of water operators, that's great to see. This is a drinking water rule review, so it's not too surprising. And then a lot of you with both certifications as well. Great to have you all here. 2 more polls. Poll number 3. Which role is most applicable to you in your role as an operator or otherwise? Direct responsible charge, certified operator in charge of a facility, certified operator, or non-certified. That could be a utility worker working under a certified operator, so on and so forth. Maybe 5 more seconds. Perfect. Again, a good mix. Unsurprisingly, a lot of certified operators. Happy to have you here. Excellent. And one last poll question for you regarding upgrading your current certifications. How often do you upgrade your certification grade? Annually, every 2 to 3 years, every 3+ years, or you don't plan to upgrade? I should have added a fifth selection for those of you who are grade 4s and don't have any more upgrades to get, but answer to the best of your abilities here. All right, 5 more seconds. And there we are. Again, a good mix. Perfect. Well, thank you for answering those questions for us, giving us a good idea of who is here attending the webinar today. But without further ado, I will pass the screen over to Ebony, who will be beginning with the state of OpCert in Arizona.
Thank you, Bram.
Thank you.
All right. All right, let's see if I can find my screen. There we go. See the presentation okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Bram. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ebony Roan. I am your OpCert program coordinator in the drinking water section. Bram Briscorn, he's also my counterpart, also working with TA and our backflow SME. Today, I'm just going to go ahead and start covering the state of OpCert. I get a lot of emails, a lot of questions. What's our pass rate? What counts for PDHs? How do we understand this alignment a bit better? We're going to go ahead and review all of that, as well as giving you the data that we've gathered over the last year, just fiscal year 2024 for OpCert in drinking water specifically, okay? We're going to go through, like I said, the operators, the systems that we have in Arizona. We're going to go through operator certification examinations, but then, certification stats as well. Few things that have kind of been a deficiency in a sense of communication on our end, probably to the operators about common alignment and early examination. Understanding qualifications for your tests, preparing for examinations, PDH questions that you may have had. We're going to answer those too. Workshops, PDHs as well. And then the future of OpCert, where we're going with this program over the next year or two. And at any point, Bram, if there are any questions, feel free to go ahead and just ask me to stop. We'll go ahead and we'll answer those questions because I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you guys really quick over the next hour.
Will do.
All right, and just as a reminder, for ADEQ specifically, a fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So for example, when I say fiscal year 2024, I'm talking about July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. And that's going to apply to any fiscal year I may reference, 2019, 20, and onward. The data is subject to change. This is, like I said, the data up to July of this year, just about mid-July. When I say change, like maybe a system went from a T3 to a T2, very rarely happens, or we've definitely acquired more operators over the span of the last few months, maybe not as much as over the last year, but just definitely more. So our numbers may have changed a bit, but in general, this data is about 2 months. And then the OpCert program is only required to submit drinking water data to the EPA. So that's what we track the most. Some aspects of what we're going to go through in this presentation, wastewater data certifications will not be covered. We're definitely going to start tracking that a bit more on our end, trying to get that information to you guys for the next State of OpCert update next year. All right, so let's just jump into it with our systems. Just guess, or if you do know, go ahead and put it in the chat. How many public water systems do you think ADEQ has been regulating by the end of fiscal year 2024? In general, how many public water systems does ADEQ regulate? Whatever answers you have, go ahead and drop them in the questions. Yeah, Just about. No idea. That's okay. And this is the information I'm going to get to you. So I see you, Mike. All right, all right. So if some of you guys were in some previous webinars, you may have seen this number. In in short, ADEQ regulates 1,500 systems, public water systems, and that includes water and wastewater. Excuse me, that includes water. Um, this is just the number that we have right now. Like I said, systems come on and offline. This can be anything from as big as a municipality like City of Phoenix to anything as small as a gas station in, say, Cochise County. We do regulate these systems. That means they do require certified operators who have certified ADEQ certifications. And then this one, another one, just an idea. If you're understanding, how many operators do you believe we have in Arizona currently? Let me put fiscal year 2024, but currently, just about. Okay, we got good some guesses. We got 750. Got 1501. Looks like Teresa's here's going one up. There you go. Mike, again, this is why we're here to get this information to you. All right. We've got quite a decent amount of answers. The actual answer right now, as of the end of fiscal year 2024, we had 7,260-ish operators certified with ADEQ. So you're probably looking at that like, hey, how many operators do we have over the span of our classes? And most of you guys are grade 1. And then you'll see the numbers go down as, the grades go up between water distribution, water treatment, wastewater treatment, and wastewater collections. And this is the stats we pulled, just a very simple chart for in July of 2024. So when you guys see our trainings, we do gear most of our trainings towards grade 1, grade 2 systems, majority distributions, and then we'll include treatment as well. Our wastewater training, we're definitely trying to get that up more. It's been going over the last year or so, and it's going to continue to grow to cater more specifically to the wastewater and wastewater treatment and collection operators. But thank you very much for answering. Hopefully, Mike, now you have an idea of the current state of our operators. A bit of information on our end, we are seeing this growth in operators certifying with ADEQ, whether through early exam, just upgrading, but mainly through, and also, through reciprocity. But what we've mainly been seeing is while we're seeing an increase in operators upgrading, we're seeing a decrease in renewals. So you guys are climbing that ladder more often than you are, kind of staying at one grade, which is fine. However your career path goes through, that's absolutely fine. We're not saying that we're seeing a decrease in renewals that's bad. We're just noticing that trend and we're trying to address it just to make sure whatever you're deciding to do, whether you're upgrading or renewal, you have the resources you need. One thing we do want to touch on, we'll touch on upgrades and examination later, but we do want to touch on one thing that's kind of been a bit of miscommunication with the renewal process, and I think you probably all will see this coming, is common alignment. So let's just go ahead and go through that real quickly just so you can understand that process. Let's see here. So common alignment is going to impact quite a few of you. I did see in the polls that some of you are grade 1s, and some of you are planning to upgrade maybe in the future a little bit later on. So this will apply to you specifically too. So common alignment is an option that we allow operators to use when they get a new certification and they want to have the same certification period, which is the same effective and expiration date for all their certifications. Before our last portal update, operators were allowed to align new certifications as soon as maybe the day before their existing ones were to expire. So if I got a certification today, and I aligned it to my existing certifications that are going to expire the end of October. That means my new cert would only have a certification period of 1 month. And that means in 1 month, I need to get 30 PDHs for that certification. So we changed it. We only allow alignment to 6 months now, but it still seems like the process is a bit confusing. Here. And just so you know, there is a difference between upgrades and renewals. Like I said, we're going to specifically right now focus on the renewal part, but renewals do require the 30 PDHs. That means all your certification periods, if they're the same or different, require 30 PDHs minimum. You do need that renewal fee, and then you can process a renewal up to 3 months before that expiration date. You do have a 90-day grace period after that expiration date to renew, but that's not the time to earn your PDHs. Like I said, your certification period is your effective date to your expiration date. The 90-day grace period does not count as part of that period. So what we're seeing is people get a new cert and they're paying the upgrade. They're going through the upgrade process, but they also believe they're going through the renewal process at the same time. If you are not adding PDHs and paying the renewal fee, your existing certs, those dates, certification period will not change. Only the new certification date will be able to change with the common alignment process. So please understand there is a difference between adding a new cert and renewing. Mainly if you're going to go ahead and start, say you just got your D2 and you want to align it with other certs, you're going to start off as normal. You're going to be adding your information to the portal, your exam scores, your student ID, everything that you got from your individual mastery report after your exam, like the date of your test as well. Please make sure you are putting in the correct test type and the correct grade. That is another issue that we've seen coming across during alignments or any sort of renewals or upgrades. Maybe you meant to put in a wastewater, but you actually put in water. So yeah, just make sure you're paying attention to what you're putting in, and if you see something after the fact, just give us an email or a call. You'll also be given the option, like I said, once you add this new cert to your portal, do you want to align? It is your right to say yes or no, but I'll show you what goes through on both ends. Let's just say you say no. If you do not want to align, that means your new cert's going to automatically receive the full 3-year certification period. Excuse me, there's missing a year there. The full 3-year certification period. And that means it will not take the expiration date of any of your existing certs. If you only have one certification, you should not be offered this option at all to align. We did have a glitch a few months ago in our system where someone who had one certification was allowed to align their new cert, their upgraded cert, but it was taking the date of the lower grade. For example, if you went up to a D2 and you only had a D1, the system would say, would you like to align your cert to the D1? And that was not acceptable. But we will fix it if that does happen. It's a very rare case, but if you only have one cert, no option for alignment should be offered for you. Now, let's say you do want to align. At this point, you're making the conscious decision to reduce your certification period of your new certification. You're going to be given all the options of the expiration dates that are available to you. Like in this example in the red box here, this operator does want to align. They earned their certification, say in 2023. Now they have the option to align to either their distribution in 2025 or their water treatment in 2024. So make sure you're paying attention to the dates that they're giving to you. Alignment is a commitment. So if you don't like the dates, if you want a full 3 years, not 2 years, not 6 months, make sure you decline the option fully. So like I said, for example, if your T1's earned in 2023, and you have existing certifications that will expire in 2025 and 2024, and you're okay with having that shorter period, you know you're going to get those PDHs within, say, a year, then accept the alignment. And ignore the prices. This is an old screenshot. You also have a second chance at your summary page to check if you did align. Right here in this box is kind of a cutout from the summary you'll see on the portal. Selected one date for alignment, 5/31/2024. Keep in mind the test date for this wastewater treatment grade 1 is July 15th. Let me see if I can get a laser here. There we go. Keep in mind, if your test date is 2023 and you want to align it to the next date, the earliest expiration date, which is going to be 2024, you're going to need to make sure you have PDHs between this time, 30 PDHs to cover this. Like I said, your certification period is your effective date, which is your test date, to your expiration date, and those need 30 PDHs each. Considerations for alignment. Always check your dates. Excuse me, get rid of the laser. There we go. First, renew before adding new certifications. We will work with operators, but we've definitely had it where people have added a cert, they've aligned, and then they try to renew and then find out, okay, I can't get those PDHs for that newest certification. I had 8 months and I didn't get the 30 PDHs. If it's just easier for you to renew, if you're close enough, before you align, then take that option, please. Choose the furthest date out if possible. If you have a 2024 date available, but a 2025, give yourself some more time to get those PDHs and get the 2025. Or opt out of common alignment altogether. If your goal is to upgrade annually, which I saw some of you said yes, that's your goal, do not align at all. Give yourself that time, that 3-year time to upgrade. Yeah, your expiration dates will be out of line, but unless you're planning to renew, those expiration dates will not matter, because as soon as you get that new cert, you'll have a new set of expiration dates. Another thing to consider is if you have all grade 4s. This is where it's going to take a little bit more planning with your upgrades, because once you get all of grade 4s, and let's just say you're within 6 months expiration for each of them, you didn't get a chance to align, you won't get that chance to again unless you retest or you let the certs lapse and then retest. So if you have any questions about aligning all your 4s to one certification period, feel free to reach out to us. We'll help you plan that, but definitely take in consideration when you are aligning grade 4s or choosing not to. Do not align new certifications to existing certification you do not intend to keep. That means an upgrade. So even if you planned on, if you got this grade 4, this water treatment grade 4, and you have a D2, if you plan to upgrade that D2, do not align that 4 to the D2. Like I said, it can get a little tricky. You'll have less time to get the PDHs for your 4, and at that point, like I said, your only chance for keeping that 4 is renewal. So that means you have to get those PDHs. Upgrading is no longer an option. Just some things to consider. Just like I said, the advantages are there for alignment. Certifications with the same expiration date and effective date will result in a lower renewal fee. And that's what you're looking for when people align. Your expiration dates are the same. That means your first cert, I believe the current price is $210, and then the additional one is $90. Please check the fees page because they do change annually. Certification management becomes easier with less dates to remember. If you don't have to remember getting 30 PDHs between 2023 and 2024, 2021 and 2024, excuse me, your certification management gets easier and you have to earn less PDHs over time. And then, yeah, you do pretty much set your career path. Like I said, whether you're upgrading annually or you just want to stay at one spot for a while, the common alignment option gives you the chance to navigate your certifications on your terms. The only trade-off is you'll have a period shorter than 3 years, excuse me. Your certification period will be shorter than 3 years, but no shorter than 6 months currently. So whatever period you have at the end, please make sure that you can gather those PDHs within that time. The program will not reverse those climate alignments unless it truly was an error on our end. Say the system automatically gave you those the alignment, or like I said, the little glitch where it was aligning the higher cert to the lower grade of the cert. We will fix those. All right. We can move on to questions. There are questions here. All right. I'm not hearing anything, Bram, so I'll go ahead and move on to examination and qualifications, how we did overall over the last year, and then just a bit of refreshers to help us continue our improvement. Currently, right now, we do have 3 exam proctors. CAC is still working on preparing for their proctoring, but right now, these are the 3 approved. Currently, it's Gateway Community College and City of Phoenix. If anyone else is offering to proctor the exam for you on their behalf, please decline and reach out to the OPCERT program. We're an open gate. You can report anonymously and we'll still follow up. So in general, a total of 4,570 or 57 operator exams were proctored by Gateway and City of Phoenix over the last year. Half of those were drinking water, and surprisingly more were actually wastewater examinations. And I say surprisingly because I wasn't expecting it, but after looking over the previous fiscal years, yeah, we tend to proctor more wastewater exams than drinking water. Also, we're seeing an increase of exams taken. Like I said, compared to fiscal year 2023, there were 558 more exams administered. Now, we're doing great with the exams. How's our pass rate? And this data was actually pleasant to go through. It may not look it right now with the fiscal year kind of scale going down, but overall our pass rates for grade 1s are pretty high. We dip a little bit at 2, and then we'll come back up at 3 and then dip a little bit at 4. Overall, the scales for all 4 classifications have been about similar. Wastewater collection, you guys are rocking it. Just a higher pass rate in general. Well, wastewater treatment, we tend to see a little bit lower, but then it's consistent within at least 5% passing rate here. And then this is just a screenshot for fiscal year 2024. So let's go ahead and look a little bit deeper for each class. This is just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I'm going to go through it in smaller overall for fiscal year. But this is just for 2024. Grade 1s, you guys are doing good across the board. And I know you're looking at that 43%. And I'm going to tell you that's still pretty good for Arizona's, for WPI exams for wastewater. You're okay on that end. And then you'll see as we get through with the grade 3s, the numbers get a little bit higher than the grade 2s. And then overall, our passing rate for 1 through 4 for all 4 classes from WPI is a 53%, especially out of 3,750 exams. That is amazing. So like I said, with the trend, if you're going back over it from all 4 grades, in general, they're still the same. And I know some people had said, okay, wait, how does that compare to our previous years, which is what our higher administration would like to know too. We're actually doing very well, actually. If you want to look at compared to, say, 2019, when our pass rate, we were still using WPI exams, our pass rate was 58% at the time. 2020 and 2021 were trying years. Of course, obviously our world was going through quite a historical moment. So of course we did see a dip in pass rates. But then after 2022, 2023, we continuously saw an increase in our pass rates overall for all 4 certifications. So we do know that this has to do quite a bit with the training and the outreach that's available for operators out there. We don't have an exact pin, but we do want to say keep up that good work. Whatever you guys are doing, whatever you're offering, we want to be as transparent to training providers as possible about the needs of our operators, what we're seeing on our end, any deficiencies. Like I said, the Operator program, we've been offering way more math classes, way more rule review webinars, but we've also been seeing Rural Water and RCAC and other companies step up too with their training. And then other entities pretty much buff up their own internal training as well. So we hope to see these numbers continue and then get finer details from WPI in the next year on where Arizona operators stand compared to the rest of the nation. But 52% is pretty good, especially since we were already doing 58% in 2019 with less certification exams taken. Now, these factors impacting the scores are very good, but there are also a few other factors that can deter our pass rates. And there's no competition for pass rates. We're not doing that. We just want to make sure you guys are learning the material and that you can properly run your system. And we're just going to go ahead and, for a second, cover early examination. Pretty much, you do need to meet a certain criteria per grade across your classes, and this is listed out in our rules and recs. And if you didn't know, if you take a picture of a URL on your phone these days, it's very nice. It can actually scan the URL and take you to where it is. So there's that URL down there if you want a copy of this page. But in short, we did break down the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4 qualifications, just so people can understand where they stand before they test, excuse me. So we'll get people emailing, say, hey, can I test for a grade 1? Can I test for a grade 4? And we'll go ahead and send them the same information we're sending you. We have these listed out just so that people are prepared for the requirements, the experience that they're going to need to know in order to run a grade 1, 2, 3, or 4 system, which conveniently WPI sets out perfectly in their exams. And then this is not a real poll question, but if anyone can just drop some comments in the question box. What do you guys use to prepare for your certification exams? We've taken this poll a few years ago, and these were the top answers before, and I'm very curious to see if they still are. Are you reading any books like Sacramento, Ragsdale? Are you taking college classes, of course, and AWWA? There's plenty of online prep from Water Nuggets to Quizlets. There's online modules like American Water College and technical learning, and we're not endorsing anyone. We're just saying the examples that have been given out before. On-the-job training is also a very good way to develop your skills for the exam. Webinars and conferences are also very good. And then other too, some people have others. Okay, perfect. All right, and seeing some American Water College too, yes, and some internal trainings. OJT, yes. Okay, Sacramento. Yeah, I do understand, Christopher. The books can get expensive. I find that they are worth the investment. I have a few myself. Perfect. So it does seem like a good mix. Like we're still in this area here where you have all of these resources. So, okay, yeah. So, yeah, all of these resources here are still very much relevant for a lot of people who've put anything in the chat. And then from what we've been told by operators over the last year, what they used, especially as we do audits. If you've been there, we've asked you, okay, what do you use? How was your training? Is there anything ADQ could provide to help, which has also helped shape our workshops. So thank you for your answers in the question box. Just a reminder, we do use the 2017 operator certification exams from WPI. You do need to hold your lower cert for at least a minimum of a year, 365 days before you can test. That means if you tested January 1st, if you're testing on New Year's Day, kudos to you. And then you're trying to test on New Year's Eve at the end, you will not qualify for that upgrade. It does need, your cert needs to be held for a minimum of at least 1 year, 365 days, okay? Utilize your need to know criteria from WPI. It breaks down all the information you're going to need per class, per grade. Like I said, for example, here you've got the wastewater treatment, grade 2, and it's going to tell you this different sections as this distribution. Grade 1 here is exampling the breakdown of questions per area, and it'll even tell you exactly how many math answers you're going to be encountering throughout the exam. In this case, for distribution grade 1, you're only going to get 8 math questions, while the rest, you see the 27, the majority of the exam is disinfection monitoring, evaluation, adjustment, laboratory analysis, and interpretation. Also, this is just a small detail. The level of complexity. This little, I don't know if you can see it, this little magnifying glass here signifies knowledge that's typically gained in the field. Those type of questions are geared towards that. So you see there's 0 here. Obviously, you're a grade 1 operator, field experience is not expected of you if you're taking this exam. So you won't get on-the-job questions. There'll be more practical, theoretical questions like in this bubble or in this chart example here. So understanding how the need to know criteria guide works will help you understand pretty much how you can pass your exam and what it is expected of you to know for your system. I'm going to skip that slide. We already kind of went through it. Study tactics that we've also found that people have reported to us at work. Start studying after you register for your exam. Give yourself time. Create an environment of learning that supports your learning, whether that's on your own or on your job, kind of following your mentor, your direct responsible charge. Quality time over quantity. Focus is what you're needed, not a bunch of flashcards. Those help, of course, memorize, but understand what you're memorizing. Write down what you read or listen to it, whatever works in your style. Some people are visual learners, some people work hands-on, work better with they're involved, they're participating with the action. And then study to improve your career. The test is only one time, but what you do at your job is going to have continuous impacts no matter what you do or where you go. So even if once you pass that T1, you might be encountering different T1 systems will have different needs. So like I said, study to understand, not just to memorize. We do offer practice exams at the ADQ office, and we are in the process of updating them. If you need to, you can go ahead and contact us, the OPCERT program directly. Pick a day, time, and then we'll go ahead and send you a calendar invite. You can take notes after the exam. We just don't let you take the actual exam home. And it's okay to bring your calculator on your phone, use your calculator on your phone, that's absolutely fine, but we actually encourage you to bring a non-programmable calculator. That's going to be pretty much the standard for every testing center for Gateway, City of Phoenix, and eventually CAC. Just so you know, if you're testing with Gateway and you're going to their main campus, they do not allow you to bring external calculators in. They don't allow you to bring anything in for the main Gateway campus. You will be provided the formula sheet, the calculators, the pencils, and I believe a little dry eraser board for any sort of math calculations you want to do on hand. That's the only location that I know of that you can't bring in a personal calculator. I think I'd go over that in a sec. Like I said, Gateway, Community College, and City of Phoenix, these are our main 2 proctors at the moment. Currently, their prices are set. City of Phoenix did see a increase in examination fees. So please prepare yourself for that. That's 65 now. And then Gateway Community College will follow suit by the end of, by next year, excuse me, the end of fiscal year next year, which June of 2025. And we'll get those updated prices up to you later. And I think I mentioned this already. Please make sure that you have a calculator when you go testing. Gateway Community College's main location will not let you bring in external calculators. Always have a photo ID. You will not be allowed to test without it. We need to know who you are. Make sure that, let's say Jane Doe isn't taking an exam for Alice Smart. The exams are 100 questions, but you'll have that 10 extra questions WPI adds in there. You don't know what those 10 questions are. Trust me, it's weird, but it's okay. They're just trying to get some metrics on how to improve the next exam, which I'll talk a bit about later on. Also, you are limited to 3 hours of the exam, so please use your time wisely. Understand your individual mastery report. This is automatically sent to you after your exam by email. You'll be able to, some places will let you see it after you test, and then other places will be like, okay, can you go outside of the room and then look at your individual mastery report? So just respect the proctor's wishes there. But either way, you'll get this email that says, okay, here's your student ID, here's your score, here's where you succeeded or you did struggle a bit, or where there were some deficiencies like the red, yellow, and green there in whatever area. But what will matter for us in ADEQ is that passing score and your student ID. We always ask that you are very truthful with reporting your scores. We do validate 100% of scores that are sent to us. If we do find any deficiencies, which ironically leads into my next point, there will be follow-up pretty much. So disciplinary actions. Apologies. So disciplinary actions taken by the program over the last year. We don't find any enjoyment in revoking or suspending an operator. It's not anything ideal. We will definitely do an investigation, try to give the benefit of the doubt. But if we do find any sort of intentional falsification, that unfortunately we do have to take action as an agency, not just for the operators who are actually keeping integrity in the system, but for the protection of the public as well. Probations and suspensions can be temporary actions, but revocation is forever. Even if an operator is trying to apply out of state, if an agency reaches out, which typically 100% of the time they do, across different states, even different territories like Guam and Puerto Rico, if we have to report to them, yes, we did have to suspend, or excuse me, place a revocation on their certification, we will report that. Once you are revoked in the state of Arizona, you can no longer certify with ADEQ. And like I said, if you're trying to go out of state, we will report any sort of disciplinary actions that involve into revocation. So in the last fiscal year, we had 4 revocations, 3 probations issued. Top reasons for those operators operating a facility in a manner that violated federal or state law. Please make sure you're keeping up with what's required. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to ADEQ. We'll clarify those things before any actions happen. Let's put it that way. If you see something that doesn't look right, up to code, up to policy, definitely start with your internal chain of command. And if that's breaking down, feel free to reach out to ADEQ and we'll follow up. They engaged in fraud, deceit, misrepresentation in the operation or supervision of a facility. Failed to cooperate with an investigation by ADEQ. If you are involved, like I said, please make sure you're providing all the information that's requested by ADEQ or enforcement unit. It just helps the process go by a lot faster. Endangering the public health, safety, or welfare is an absolute no for us in ADQ, and should be for you as well. You guys are pretty much the gatekeepers for their safety, making sure the water that's being sent out to the distribution system or into people's homes is safe, quality, meets minimum standards. So knowingly or negligently prepares a false or fraudulent report or record, just don't do it. If you miss sample, make sure that's reported, or don't change any data. Don't erase P's and A's on your test. Just avoid all of these actions, please. Like I said, we don't want to revoke any certifications. We want to keep our operators, but like I said, public health, safety, and water quality does come first for us. All right. And then also that does, reports and records does also fall for your, fall under falsification of, say, like PDHs, or any sort of certification data like examination data that you may submit to us. One of these revocations was falsification of information to obtain a certification. Like I said, we check all of our certifications, and we do validate your PDHs, we do validate your renewals and upgrades. Yeah, you have the power to do them at your own free will and your own free time. We're not bothering you, but we are still checking in the background just to make sure that everything's on the up and up. So please, that's only 4 out of how many operators I just mentioned, so that's really good. Let's keep that number to 0 next year. All right. And then let's move on to professional development hours and training. Real quickly, the officer program offered over 130 PDHs last year, free of cost to over 1,300 attendees. 34 workshops, drinking water, wastewater, operations, math, leadership development, emergency preparedness, and chemistry. We do try to cover as many topics as possible. This was a screenshot from our leadership development last year, which was in Tempe, which is really good. But we had so many workshops that we covered, and we honestly couldn't do it with the help of our community. And apologies, I couldn't get their logos here, but from like the FBI to KCA to Corolla to Aquapure to the EPA, NCS to AZ Warren, we work with a lot of different entities, organizations, public and private, to bring this training to you guys free of cost. So we do also encourage operator to operator training, such as what David Prince-Horde did for our distribution workshop last year by carrying an entire session for himself. We encourage it, so if you are interested, please always reach out. And that brings us up to the other question that we often get from the program is, what qualifies as PDHs? Not just from training providers, but from operators as well. Just remember, we are very general with what counts as PDHs for your water and wastewater certs. You can cover so many different aspects working at a facility that we had to keep that definition pretty broad and general. So engineering, biological, or chemical sciences. So if you're going to a PFAS webinar in a couple of months, that counts. Even if you're not working directly with PFAS, closely related technicals or scientific discipline or operations management, which most trainings will fall under. How do you run your system correctly, safely? Any of those aspects. Yes, safety training does count for PDHs. Electrical, especially if you're doing a lot of that at your system, does count for PDHs. So just know it's a catch-all. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us. Something like say physical fitness or nutrition would not count as PDHs. That's just personal development at the end of the day. We want something that's going to apply to your water or wastewater certification. And as I mentioned, a PDH is equivalent to 1 hour of training. We do get questions about CEUs. Yes, we do take the conversion of 1 CEU equals 10 PDHs, but Arizona's rules or administrative code does not mention CEUs. We only mention PDHs, and we have a defined definition for it. So we've adopted the national definition of CEU, which is 1 CEU to 10 PDHs. CEUs for Arizona is college level courses. So 3 semester units is 30 PDHs. If you go to a conference and they're offering, say, 2 CEUs, that means that you are at that conference for a minimum of at least 20 hours. I believe the World Water Conference coming up is offering 1.8 CEUs. So you're going to be at that conference for a minimum of 18 hours or earn a minimum of 18 PDHs. So understand the conversions. We've had some seminars say 12 CEUs for 2 days of attendance. That does not mean you earned 120 PDHs. You are there hour to hour for that conference. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to us about that, and we'll reach out to the conference as well, just so they understand the Arizona conversion. All right, wrapping up, what's next for the OPSERT program? What's next for you as an operator? Well, WPI did announce their 2025 operator exam and an update to the need to know criteria guides. They have a conference, their annual conference in New Orleans this January coming up. Well, they'll be announcing more information, but the intent of the OPSERT program is to go from the 2017 exam to the 2025 exam. The 2025 exam will also have Spanish options for each of the exams. Excuse me. So that will be available for those who have been requesting it. And then certification exam accessibility. The demand is high from current and new faces entering the workforce. We do recognize that. That's why we are working with CAC to open up proctoring, but we're also looking at other avenues for testing, just literally as of this week. So more information as the year goes on, we'll be able to provide that to you, but definitely confirm we'll go from the 2017 to the 2025 after a trial period. So whenever we get these new exams, there is always a trial where we test out each of the exams before we accept them, just to make sure that they're applicable to Arizona. Also, we're going to have more in-person workshops in different parts of the state. Rule reviews are pretty much going to be strictly held as webinars, just for a wider accessibility. So when we do meet in person, we can focus on some more highly requested, needed topics. Our training will continue to be geared towards grade 1, grade 2, and remote operators who probably don't have a board or an admin who's like running their PDHs for them. So we just want to make sure you guys are getting your PDHs no matter where you are, and no matter how long or short your certification period is. Outreach in small and rural communities, the OPSERT program wants to become more involved with that, especially with our science engagement unit. We want to continue expanding our partnerships for workshops and webinars. That list I mentioned earlier with all those people who have helped us over the last year put on these trainings, it can expand, just trust me on that. So if you are interested in helping, once again, I'm going to put the small plug in. Please come in for information, not for sales pitches. We're not here to help you sell anything. We just want to get this information across so our operators or system owners can run their systems efficiently, get the information they need, or get the PDHs they need for their own personal development. And then continued input on operator feedback. We can't do what we do without your feedback and your participation. We do take your feedback very seriously, whether it's the good or the bad. We do follow up. Hey, there's cheating at an exam. We're there. We're going to follow up. Hey, can we get some help on this, and this for testing? I've taken a test 6 times. We're going to follow up. How do we get into the workforce? We're going to follow up. Your feedback matters to us, so please continue to do that. Send it however you can, whether it's through our Q&A survey for workshops or just emailing us directly. And with that, once again, thank you for all of your hard work across the board. And we appreciate you. We're happy that you're here to help us keep the public health the safety of the public health and the environment. So, any questions? I think I ended with like 4 minutes.
Yeah, there is a little more time if any questions are out there, but I don't see any at this point, Ebony.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Bram.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much, Ebony. We will keep on going to our next presenter then. Karthik, I will pass the screen control over to you for some info on advanced water purification and operator certification.
Good morning, everyone. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to talk about the advanced water purification, or what is called in the rest of the world as direct particle reuse. And we know how to treat water to any standard we want, but if we treat it to a very high standard, it's going to be so expensive nobody can afford water. So today I'll talk about the science behind the rule and the values we adhere to, and how did we come up with the policies and eventually the rule. My name is Karthik Marasamy. I'm a principal engineer here at DEQ. I've probably talked in, and you've heard me talk before in multiple conferences and other avenues. I'm also the technical lead for this rulemaking. I was the chair for the technical advisory group. So let's start with the definition. What is advanced water purification? It is the planned introduction of recycled water directly into a drinking water treatment facility or a public water system, and which is meant for distribution to the customer. Like I mentioned earlier, advanced water purification is essentially direct particle reuse. We did a survey that was a more appealing name, so we used that term. So let's start with this question. Does direct particle reuse or advanced water purification raise the stakes? We believe so. It is very fast response times. Processes are different. It's industrial source control taken on a new form. It also means we need to have operators who are able to run these facilities so we don't compromise public health. So a little bit of background. We've been doing groundwater augmentation for a while in the state. Essentially, the community uses water, goes through wastewater treatment, followed by some advanced water treatment like Scottsdale, and then put it into an aquifer, and then at some point we can pull it back up and use that water. So that's groundwater augmentation. Some other states like California have done reservoir water augmentation, or in the plan to, or have plans to do that. So the community uses the water, goes through wastewater treatment, advanced water treatment, followed by putting that water in the reservoir and then pulling it back for water treatment. So a lot of communities have done this in different fashion, but here we're trying to take out that natural buffer. And in raw water augmentation setting, after it goes through advanced treatment, we are putting it at the headworks of an existing drinking water facility or a new drinking water facility, a conventional facility. In the treated water augmentation, we take out the existing drinking water facility or a conventional drinking water facility and directly put that water in the distribution system. So yes, the stakes are higher. What are the drivers for this rulemaking? And we've all seen the bathtub rings, especially last year in the media. we don't have enough water here. This is the graphic from showing that there's not enough water in Lake Mead, which means cuts. So we want to be prepared for that potential scenario of not having enough water. So this is one of the many options. This program is not mandatory. If utilities want to pursue this approach, they can. But if they choose to, then there are rules that they have to adhere to. Another driver is population growth. We have a lot of people moving into the state, which means there's an increased demand on the resources. So this is another driver why we saw a need to put together this rule. Last year, we did a survey about 1,300 people, and we learned a lot of information from that survey. On the left, what you see is some really interesting facts. DPR, at that time, it was still DPR, was well received, and the public thought that was a viable part of the solution to our water problem. There was also a broad concern about water supply back then and in the future. We also learned that a lot of us were drinking bottled water or were filtering water at home. So good piece of information for us. And we also learned that educational outreach programs can overcome any barriers to DPR adoption. Why? Because there was some skepticism about safety and the yuck factor and the cost. But once we educated them about, at least the participants, that here is what is actually being done, we saw that there was a change in the perception. So on the right side, what you see is a pie chart, which if you sum it up, very likely, somewhat likely, got about 70% of the population who would be willing to drink advanced purified water. Let me give you some timeline. The administrative code allowed the use of reclaimed water in 2001, but at that time we put in a prohibition for the direct potable reuse. But then that prohibition was removed in 2018, and the state allowed direct potable reuse. 1 year later, in 2019, we had Scottsdale approved for their direct potable reuse demonstration facility. And they have been, in case you've not visited, it's a good place to go. You can go get tasting, and they also provide water for making beers and other beverages. This rulemaking, we are expecting it to be done by end of this year. Timelines may get adjusted depending on some other factors, but that's still the target. While this is a pretty heavy lift for any agency, because there's no federal parallel to go back to and look at, here's how we should do it, hence the reason for putting together the rule. We did have a lot of literature that we could rely on, and so here is just a few of that work. Some are specific to Arizona. The top two that you see there were done in the studies, and the guidances were published for the Arizona, understanding our water situation. As I mentioned earlier, we know how to treat water. We can treat water to any standard we want, but if we make it such high quality, then the cost is going to go up. So at the start of this rulemaking effort, we decided that we need to have some guiding principles. So we don't make it unaffordable, but at the same time, we don't compromise on public health. We want the community to support it. Every decision that we made as part of this rule can be scientifically defended. Every value is that we came up with, every number that we came up with is transparent, and everybody knows why we did what we did. And also, keeping with Arizona's tradition, we wanted to keep the process and the framework somewhat flexible. I'll talk about that a little later. Somewhat flexible. What do I mean by that? Is put in some guardrails, but then keep it flexible. This ensures that we don't have to engage in a rulemaking process if there are advancements in treatment technology, if there are advances in monitoring, if there are advances in anything, we don't have to go change the rule. So we are defining what to get to, meaning we are defining the goals, and how to get to, we're putting the guardrails, but we're not really specifying this is the treatment train or this is the specific technology you have to use. Maybe some of you here in this call were involved in the technical advisory group. Many were as part of the TAG. We had engineers, academics, members who were risk assessors. We had a lot of utilities representing really small utilities to the large ones. We had folks who had lab expertise. We had operators with both water, wastewater background. We had regulators from other states. We had regulators from the counties. We had contractors. We had toxicologists, to list some of the expertise that we had in the TAG. Contractors brought certain unique expertise that consulting engineers did not bring. So we saw value in that, especially in terms of cost. 68 people is a lot. It's a good amount of people donated a lot of time. However, we had to figure out a way to manage the resources that we had. So we split the group into 5 based on these topics: pathogen control, chemical control, treatment, operations, and outreach. So I'll talk all in a little more detail about each of these topics, but pathogen control is coming up with the standards of what to regulate in terms of pathogens. Chemicals is same, what chemicals should be regulated and what should be stopped, which is enhanced source control. And once we set the standards for pathogens and chemicals, we have to come up with some of the guardrails for treatment. So those guardrails have to be put in place for the wastewater side. Guardrails have to be put in place for the advanced water treatment side. And to make sure it's robust, we have to have monitoring and process control requirements, and at least have an understanding of what kind of reuse is anticipated to come in, so we write the rules for that. And then if utilities wanted to pursue pilots or just demonstrations, what should the requirements look like? Now, once we put in the treatment requirements, then we have to get that outcome in a consistent basis. So we have to develop operations piece. So several sections there: facility operations and maintenance, OpCert, which I will talk about later in the presentation. TMF, it takes on a new form here. We have smaller utilities. What are the challenges they face? How can we make sure we accommodate them without compromising public health? Big utilities will have the resources, but smaller utilities may not have all the resources they need. How do we accommodate them while at the same time not compromising on public health? So we put a lot of thought into that. And this can be only successful via utility collaboration, meaning the sewer shed, which is all the collection systems and the community that's contributing to the wastewater, really needs to collaborate with the water treatment side of the equation. So how is that? What kind of framework we need. So a lot of thought went into that, and we have put together rules for that. And public outreach is, as the survey indicated, is key. So public needs to accept. So how do we educate? So we pulled some tools for that, and we have put in place in the rules some of the outreach components that are voluntary, but some are required, just to make sure that it's going back to the transparency, make sure that the community knows where their water is coming from. In some sense, it's borrowing the same ideas from the Safe Drinking Water Act, just taking it a little bit further. This is a summary. I need to update this graphic. We have engaged stakeholders in different settings. We've talked a lot more than what's shown here. We had technical advisory group meetings. We engaged the public in different settings. I myself have talked at multiple cities and towns across the state. Anybody who were sort of interested, we talked to them, educating them about what the program is likely to look like, so they are aware and prepared. Even though DEQ, the state does not have jurisdiction over the tribes, we still had an engagement there. We reached out to them, we talked to them about the program, and let them know what we were doing. Last year in November, we released this roadmap for advanced water purification. This is a document that's telling the public, letting them know how is the state thinking about regulating direct potable reuse or advanced water purification. So what is the science behind the rules that the framework that we have proposed? Why did we take an approach that we did? All the details are there. We got comments after this was published, so we tweaked a little bit on some of those things. And after we did that, we put a public, it's now in the public domain. You can go and search for advanced water purification rulemaking. You should be able to go to this ADEQ webpage and look at the draft rule, which has been, I believe, for almost a month and a half or 2 months now in the public domain. So I would encourage you to go look at it. There's, again, we got a lot of comments from this, from the community. With both the roadmap and the draft rule is not a statutory requirement. We wanted to engage the public very early on, hence we put out all these documents so everybody's in the loop, so people have had multiple opportunities to look at it and comment on things, and make sure we put together a rule that is very safe, but at the same time affordable, and something that works. So we have engaged the community for almost 2 years now. So I would encourage you, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at these rules, please go take a look at them. The rules will not capture all the science. If you want to look at the science, you can go to this roadmap. There are some things that are not were changed. For that, we will put out another document probably in the next a month or so, which will cover all the details that were not covered in this document. Here's a very high-level summary of the program. So start with what the treatment objectives are, and how did we come up with the removal standards, and what are the removal standards? And then what are the requirements for wastewater and advanced water? What are those standards? What does the utility needs to adhere to? And then once you set those, once the design is complete, and from an operations side, what are the things that the utilities need to do, or an advanced water purification facility needs to do to make sure that they're consistently getting that water quality outcome that we have defined. And also, I'll briefly touch on the mundane side of things, permitting, which has to be done, the paperwork. So there's a lot of work and thought that went into putting together a framework for permitting, and a really interesting process. May not be interesting to the outside world, but it is interesting to ADEQ, making sure that we get a program that actually works. If you're on the wastewater side, you might have, depending on the type of facility you are at, you might have already heard about the National Pretreatment Program. The National Pretreatment Program, the goals are to keep comply with the Clean Water Act. Now we're pushing that boundary, and the new program to comply with the end goal being drinking water is what we call enhanced source control. I'll talk about that as well. Monitoring requirements are very different compared to any of the other facilities, both on the drinking water side and the wastewater side that we have seen before. So it takes on a new form. I'll talk about some of the public communication plan in a little more detail as well. So here's a very high-level overview of the program. So we tackled questions about what will this program look like? How does that marriage between is the Safe Drinking Water Act and Advanced Purification Program happen? How do we connect to the Safe Drinking Water Act? What is the role of the APP program? Then we have to figure out what kind of staff do we need at the agency, how many we need, what type of permits, what kind of approvals, and in terms of administration, what kind of framework we need there. And something that will be key to the success of this program is folks like you all. So we have created a new program called Advanced Operator Certification Program, and I'll talk a lot more about it. Public notice requirements, the reporting is different here. The success of this program, both from the utility side and from the ADEQ side. So we have to think about cost and funding structures, and some more of the mundane side of things, licensing timeframes, making sure that if you send in an application, we provide a response in a timely fashion. So putting in some guardrails for the agency there. Then there's compliance and enforcement. How do we do that? Do we need to get additional authority to make sure we can actually implement the program? And if we need assistance, we wanted to create a legal framework to get that assistance. And that assistance is via what we call the Project Advisory Committee. So it's on a case-by-case basis. If we need that help, we can get that help. And there's a mechanism in the rule or the proposed rule that will allow us to do that. We basically regulate two things. We have come up with standards for pathogens, pathogen removal, and we have come up with standards for chemical removal. When it comes to pathogen removal, identifying what pathogens to remove and how much to remove, and also note that pathogens pose an acute health risk. When it comes to chemicals, what chemicals to remove, how much to remove, and some of them are acute, but most are chronic. This is a very high-level overview. We did have a publication in the peer-reviewed literature to go through the science in a lot more detail. At this point, we have proposed 2 ways to design an advanced water treatment facility and comply with the Advanced Water Purification Program. We have 3 pathogens that we are regulating, or 3 groups of pathogens: viruses, Giardia, and Crypto. So 2 protozoas and 1 virus. We believe if we remove these, we are taking care of pretty much everything that's out there. When it comes to viruses, the accounting is starting from the raw wastewater to the water that is put in the distribution system, the finished water. So that number needs to be 13 logs. what that translates to is 99.11 nines after that percent removal for virus. Similarly, for Giardia and crypto, it is 10 log removal. The accounting, that's option 1, is the accounting starts from raw wastewater. That is the water, if you sample the water there to the water that is in the distribution system. So that accounting should be 13 logs for virus, 10 logs for Giardia and crypto. We also know that wastewater treatment plants are removing some of the pathogens. We wanted to give them credit. Why? Because there is science supporting it, and that will allow us to build facilities and make that water affordable. So if the facility samples for what's in their water, in the treated wastewater, then the accounting starts from the treated wastewater, and they can lower the 13, 10, 10 to a number that's appropriate for them. But let's say the answer is we are pretty much taking out everything. Let's say if that's the answer. Sometimes it may be the answer. In those cases, what we are doing is we are putting in some guardrails. So the guardrail here is 8, 6, 5.5 log removal. So even if you're sampling from the treated wastewater says that I don't have to remove anything else, hence I don't need to put an advanced water treatment facility, that's not an option. You have to put in an advanced water treatment facility and design it such that you hit the target of 8, 6, 5.5 for the log removal. If you want to understand a little more about the details, it's in the roadmap. You can take a look at it. I encourage you to go look there. Why did we pick these reference pathogens? Like I said, if we start sampling for everything that's out there, it's going to be very expensive. But if we have, if we take this approach, it makes it affordable, and there is plenty of literature and science supporting this approach. If we look at norovirus and Giardia, then crypto, we basically take care of everything else. Now, norovirus, Giardia, and Salmonella are the top 3 pathogens that contribute to GI episodes in the US. Crypto is the 6th one. If we take out bacteria, if we take out viruses and protozoa, we assume that it's protective against bacteria as well. So there is plenty of literature supporting that. We wrote the rules for removing virus, norovirus. However, the treatment is designed for adenovirus because adenovirus is a little more difficult to remove. So the treatment is targeted for adenovirus, but the amount of treatment is targeted towards norovirus because it's the concentrations are higher. The drinking water regulations in the US have been based on this a policy call, really, which is in the federal framework, which is what we have adopted here. That is one risk of 1 person getting sick in a population of 10,000 people annually. That's the target we are trying to achieve. Now, with regards to chemical standards, humanity produces a lot of chemicals. If we start sampling for every one of them, water will be so expensive, it'll be unaffordable. So we have to come up with a smart way to manage this. So tier 1, what we did was we split the chemicals into 3 tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 are those chemicals that are currently regulated in Safe Drinking Water Act, which have established MCLs. Examples: arsenic, nitrate, DBPs, regulated DBPs. Tier 2 are those chemicals that are not currently regulated in the Safe Drinking Water Act. However, they are problematic in the context of advanced water purification. Why? Because once you take out the natural buffer, the treatment that happens there's plenty of evidence that the treatment happens there and it's quantified to a certain extent. That buffer, once you remove the buffer, those chemicals will have to be removed and in an accelerated fashion in an advanced water treatment facility. So we put in place the program requirements for that. Now, the question then becomes, how do you how do you come up with that list? And if we come up with that list, how much should we remove? So I'll talk about how do we come up with that list and the answer to how much should be removed. This program, the Tier 3, is all about making sure a process is working as designed. Surrogates such as sucralose, sulfate, carbamazepine, or a whole bunch of other surrogates, 1,4-dioxane, are telling the operators that it was designed a certain way and it is operating that same way. We're hitting the targets the way we are supposed to. So Tier 3 is those chemicals which are surrogates to tell us that the performance is how we wanted it to be per design. So that's how we divided the three groups in chemicals into three groups. Now let me talk about how we establish what will fall under Tier 2 chemicals. There's a lot of material here. I'll make it a little simple. We basically start off with the 2018 Health Advisories table, which EPA published. That's the starting list. A lot of the chemicals there have MCLs, but there is quite a few that don't have an MCL. They have a health advisory. So a utility needs to figure out what's in their sewer shed and sample for those. And once they sample for those, see if that is problematic and then put in treatment. Let's say a utility comes across a chemical that's not in the 2018 list because it is a proprietary chemical. Then the ask from the department now is you go look at other databases, national, international databases, see if there is some study in some credible literature that say that this is the health advisory, this is what you should be serving your community. If that exists, then you could use that. If that's not there, then the last resort to a bioassay. We've added some things to the rule that will get that expertise using the project advisory committee on a case-by-case basis to suggest or help us pick what bioassay should be used. So we're going to provide, we've written some things in the rule to allow us to get that help and help out the utilities. So once we have the list, once we have the list of chemicals on the Tier 2 side and the targets, we now have what chemicals we need to treat the water to and at what level. So we have answered that question. Now, there are other details that we need to run the program on the technical side and the design side. So on the technical side, we need the enhanced source control, which is essentially a beefed up version or a more robust version of the national pretreatment program. As some of these things might be new, we have a piloting requirement for the facility. We'll have new requirements for the wastewater treatment plants. DMF takes a new form given that there are additional challenges in this program, and also utility collaboration is a must. So you will at least have a wastewater utility or a plant, sometimes not owned by the same entity. So there needs to be that collaboration. Wastewater plants and the drinking water plants need to collaborate. From the design side of things, like I said, tradition in Arizona is how do we set the goals that one has to achieve. So if we have to achieve these goals without specifically telling this is what you need to use as a treatment train, how do we come up with a solution? And that's all part of the multivariate treatment, and I'll go over a little bit on that. We have specific requirements for total organic carbon management. Then we have we're not explicitly requiring salinity management. However, salinity is expected to fluctuate. So corrosion control requirements have been the way we look at it is going to change a little bit in this context. Wastewater plants, that's what we deal with, nitrogen. So nitrates, acute contaminant in drinking water. So we got to treat it in a special fashion. So there are requirements specifically for nitrates. There are things that we don't regulate. So as a backup, as a way to take care of all the synthetic organics that we don't explicitly regulate, we have made advanced oxidation process. Not what advanced oxidation process, but advanced oxidation process as mandatory. So engineered storage buffers are not a requirement. However, we will evaluate failure response times, and based on that, a system may need an engineered storage buffer. Enhanced source control is for those of you who are familiar with the National Pretreatment Program. It just takes on a new form, but from my conversations with some of the bigger utilities here in the state, a lot of them are pretty close to doing enhanced source control already. So for them, it might not be a big leap, but for utilities who have not practiced National Pretreatment Program, or who they're not required to practice because they are under 5 MGD, then for them it is going to be a bigger jump. We have put in place requirements for regulatory authority, requirements for monitoring of the non-domestic sources. They have to do inventory of what chemicals are there and who is discharging it, making sure that you're doing investigation of the sources. And we put in place a broad guideline for the requirement for an early warning system. We have also have a requirement for pollutant reduction and elimination plans. And if there is a response that needs to happen, well, how should that look like? So there set out some requirements in the rule for that as well. So enhanced source control is the National Pretreatment Program plus. A little bit more to that. Why is this different in an AWP context? The National Pretreatment Program, which is the conventional source control program, the goal is to prevent pollutants from entering a wastewater treatment plant. What does that mean? You're trying to protect the treatment plant. You're trying to make sure that it doesn't interfere with your processes. You're trying to make sure that you're complying with the goals set in Clean Water Act. So you're protecting the receiving water. In the enhanced source control program, you're not only preventing the pollutants from entering the plant, treatment wastewater plant, but you're also trying to make sure that it gets you that consistent water quality that can go into an advanced water treatment facility, and so that you can treat it to drinking water standards. So now the goal is not just protecting the receiving water, but to make sure it's drinkable. So transitioning from compliance with clean water to drinking water. So a big change in how we need it, and hence the need for that improved program. Some of these things are new, and there's a need for pilot testing. Every sewer shed is different. So pilot testing is mandatory, which is for a minimum of 1 year. And the pilot train has to be operated continuously during that period. We also want to make sure that it's representative of the scale and the performance of the full-scale plant and the processes that will be designed in the full-scale plant. Because when we approve the pilot, that means we are saying this train actually will work for your water, means you can go ahead and build a full-scale plant. So the processes and the scale should be representative of that. In addition to that, the pilot experience can one can ask for that pilot experience to be counted towards their qualifying experience as for part of the Advanced Water Treatment Operator Certification Program. I'll talk about that too. Now, going back to this multiple barrier treatment, our tradition in Arizona has been this flexible framework, but put in the guardrails. From a pathogen standpoint, this was one of the most difficult things that we came up with. This is kind of the general solution really to the pathogen problem and the chemical problem. When it came to pathogens, the protocol that we have come up with, a standard that we have come up without telling what you should do specifically in terms of putting in a particular treatment, here's the next best solution. So for pathogens, the solution is a minimum of 1 filtration, which is we're targeting physical separation there, and 1 disinfection, either chemical or physical destruction, for each target organism. So one has to demonstrate for virus filtration and disinfection. Same thing for Giardia and Crypto. To get that 13-10-10, or if the utility has sampled their treated wastewater, they can lower that number. Similarly for chemicals, the ask is at least, or the requirement is at least 3 separate treatment processes, and they have to be diverse treatment mechanisms. But one of those should be AOP, which is an advanced oxidation process, and the other one being physical separation. Now, advanced oxidation process, if you're not specifying which specific advanced, it has to be an advanced oxidation process. So it's more general there. TOC management takes a new form in this program. We have 2 approaches to TOC management. We have the standard approach, which is less than equal to 2 milligrams per liter of TOC in the finished water, meaning in this case, it is the water coming out of the advanced water treatment facility. There is another option, which is site-specific, which the utility can sample, and it's in the draft rule, and then we'll publish the NPRM probably the next 2 weeks, which will have that detail as well. One could sample and come up with their own limit based on their own local water conditions. So we have allowed for that flexibility there. A little bit more detail on why do we need TOC management, and why is what's in the Safe Drinking Water Act not really adequate for the wastewater context or the reuse context. One, we don't explicitly regulate all synthetic organics in all DBPs. There are only some DBPs that are regulated. So in a reuse context, this takes a new form. So we have to make sure that we are accounting for all the things that are not, we are not explicitly regulated. Safe Drinking Water Act never contemplated the use of treated wastewater. So again, TOC is a different composition if you just take sample water from a river versus treated wastewater. There are studies published about the number and type of chemicals that are present in treated wastewater versus the number and type of chemicals that are present in other surface water bodies. And nothing in the Safe Drinking Water Act framework is specifically geared to manage bulk organics. So again, a need for putting together a framework for managing TOC here. If just a kind of a quick example, if we use the Safe Drinking Water Act framework to manage TOC as part of this program, so we're talking maybe 30, conservatively 30 TOC in treated wastewater, 30 milligrams per liter. So the alkalinity likely is going to be more than 120. So in that table that we have there, that would mean 30% removal, translating to 9 milligrams per liter. That's a lot of TOC. So hence the framework, the Safe Drinking Water framework is not really geared to manage. So another reason why we have put together a framework for TOC management in this program. we had to come up with specific requirements for full-scale verification. There are manuals and studies in the peer-reviewed literature and other guidance documents that say when you go from pilot to full scale, it's never linear. It takes on its own path. So even though you demonstrated compliance in pilot, doesn't mean you're going to be able to comply in full scale. So there's a requirement for full scale verification. We are going to review and approve the operations plan. We are going to look at what are the situations and how your off-spec water is going to be managed. Off-spec meaning you're not hitting the targets. How are you going to divert that water? What's the mechanism you're going to divert that water to? You're going to put it back at the front of the plant, or you're going to discharge as part of an APP permit. So every facility that is part of an advanced water purification will likely have an APP or some other discharge permit, because there is always going to be, or there is a good possibility that you will have to deal with off-spec water. This is drinking water, so vulnerability assessment is also part of the equation. We need to know what's the shutdown plan is, cross connection. Here, obviously, we're changing the paradigm, really. If you all know all this, we're changing this from recycled water do not drink to recycled water, please do drink. So everything changes here. So cross connection here takes a new form. Like I said, we're not explicitly asking for salinity control or management. However, that would mean corrosion control needs to be looked at differently. So we have specific guidances that are currently being worked on. It's not in the rule, but it's going to be part of guidance. So we will review through that lens, and corrosion control will take on a new form in this program. Monitoring and reporting requirements, there's going to be an initial source water characterization of the treated wastewater for both the pathogen and chemicals, to say here is the amount of treatment that we need for this situation. This is important because if we put one size fits all, it's going to be very expensive for a small utility. If you don't have to treat for things you don't have to treat for, your community shouldn't be putting the resources towards sampling and monitoring those chemicals. So you only need to put in the resources to monitor and control things that you have a problem with. This is as part of that, keeping the program flexible and affordable. And then there's the ongoing compliance for both the pathogen and the chemical, where you said you're going to remove so much, are you continuously be able to remove those parameters. With regards to chemical monitoring, here's a little more detail. Tier 1 chemicals, which is all the Safe Drinking Water Act chemicals, federally regulated with established MCLs, but in some cases, they take on a slightly different form, like in nitrates. The Safe Drinking Water Act framework is not fully suited for managing nitrates, so the frequency of monitoring and reporting is different in this program. Tier 2, there's nothing in the federal framework for Tier 2, so we have put together the requirements for Tier 2. I would again encourage you to go take a look at the rule and the roadmap, which has all the details. Tier 3 is those performance-based indicators, which we will approve at the time when the applications come in for the design. That's again custom based on what the utility or the facility is, what treatment train they have. Now, operator certification, we had a group looking at it, technical advisory group. It comprised of operators from really small utilities to medium-sized utilities, large utilities, covering distribution system, collection system, treatment, both on water and wastewater side. We had skill sets that was pretty broad. We had engineers, we had academics. So after a lot of discussion and thought, this is what we came up with. We looked at the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and we reviewed the current program, both on the water side and the wastewater side, all four really. And we identified what the gaps are, and then we decided that we need a new program to run these facilities and make sure it's safe. So why we have a separate AWTO certification? The processes are complex. The response times are very short, and wastewater can vary quite a bit. Please note, instead of putting it in the ground or discharging it to the environment, we're putting it in front of an advanced water treatment facility or in the distribution system directly. So it changes the game completely. So we need a higher skill set here. And then we're going to monitor a lot. Being able to respond and deal with the large amounts of data is critical. So hence, the state came to the conclusion that we need a separate program. In this slide, I said we did identify gaps. Here's a little more detail on the gaps, what that gaps really meant. So we did a thorough analysis of the need to know criteria, both for the drinking water and the wastewater. We looked at every single question in the exam, made sure that what is being actually tested compared with the California, Nevada, American Water Works Association's CWEA program, and essentially saying, here's what is the gap, because the programs are similar, here is what is the gap, and came up with the criteria for the operator certification program here. Here is a very high level overview of what the gaps are. The source water changes, the risk is obviously wastewater. The operators need to know the AWP rule and how wastewater processes changes and the impacts on advanced water treatment. Enhanced source control is key because we are not putting in treatment. We are counting that we are not going to allow those things to come into the system in the first place, chemicals and pathogens. And the critical control point approach, while not new, takes on a new form here, and the responses are different. And some examples are the way we had managed UF, BAC, AOP, RO. It's not really there in the current programs, at least the form it takes in advanced water purification. So those were some of the gaps. So here is the proposed program. There's an eligibility requirement. So if you are a grade 4 drinking water operator with a minimum of 1 year experience, then you are eligible to take the exam. If you're a grade 3 drinking water operator or a grade 4 wastewater operator with a minimum of 2 year experience, then you're eligible to take the exam. You have to have at least 1 year of hands-on experience in the operation of a minimum of 3 advanced water treatment processes in a single train. Piloting experience is acceptable. So in order to increase the pool and make sure we set it up for success, we are saying piloting is acceptable. If you remember in the piloting slide, I talked about it has to be scalable. One of the reasons why we put that there was you could claim that I have the experience, so that experience should be translatable. In addition to the piloting actually providing us with useful data, it is also helping us increase the operator pool. We also put in requirements for a transition period. The exam requirement and who gets to become an AWT operator is if you get at least 70%, which is similar to other certifications. The DRC is one who has the AWT, who has passed the AWT exam and has met the minimum criteria, and has drinking water 4 certification. Shift operators are grade 3 drinking water or grade 4 wastewater with who have passed the exam and who have the experience. Again, going back to the data requirements, the management of these systems, there's a lot of data that's going to be coming in. This Simpsons thing, I thought it was funny. Where you don't want to overwhelm folks with the data. you need to know what you need to really control, hence the need for the certification. Here are some possible configurations based on which this rule was written. It is flexible. We're not saying here's how you should do it, but here are some general ways to do it, very high level again. So if I start with the community using water and then putting it in a direct facility, and then advanced treated water going through a buffer, or not a buffer, putting it directly back in the distribution system, or putting it at the front of the existing drinking water facility. And of course, the sources can be, the primary source can be either surface water or groundwater. So depending on, so the rule right now is written for this general and with some flexibility to accommodate other scenarios if they arise that we did not think of. Here are some treatment trains. It's the top one is the El Paso train, which is MFRO, UV, AOP, GAC, followed by chlorination. The Pure Water San Diego train, they have the ozone BAC, MFRO, UV, AOP, and GAC, followed by chlorination. The Phoenix train, we have ozone, BAC, UF. That may change, I think, but this is one of the plans that we had from before. Permitting, this is how permitting was done, and this is how permitting will be done. We write, put in the guardrails, we say here's what you need to achieve, but once a utility decides how to achieve, we rely on these guidance manuals to say, make things certain really, so that the consulting engineers who are submitting these plans know exactly what to submit, and the reviewers know what to review, because these are complex trains, so we need to have specific requirements. Since we are not putting specific requirements in rule, we are putting some of those specific requirements here. So in a way it's a requirement, in a way it's not. It's a requirement. If you choose that option, that's the best way we know how to do it. If you choose to deviate from that, then you need to demonstrate with sufficient data that that approach actually works. So these guidance manuals are being worked on right now. We'll make them available as well. So these are the 6 guidance manuals, one for enhanced source control, one for membrane, one for carbon train. TMF, like I said, is going to take a new form. There's operations guidance, and then the REC facilities are going to also be operated and maybe in some cases tweaked from a design standpoint to make sure that it can produce that consistent water, water quality that can be used for this program. So several consulting firms are helping us out with these guidance documents. In the process, we've been talking to a lot of really small utilities. This may not be an option at this point in time. However, we are working, the agency is working with the utilities and with the universities to push that envelope to see, you know, how can we make things affordable to every community in the state while not compromising on public health. So there are some fundamental research. I personally am involved with several advisory groups and part of projects which are pushing that envelope, looking at furthering the science, furthering our understanding of that body of knowledge. So making sure that it's more affordable to a lot more communities. Public outreach is key. So there is going to be some requirements. There's going to be some guidelines, but this is key for making sure that there is acceptance. So we are putting together some resources to help out utilities, but we are also leveraging other studies and tools that are available in the national space to make sure that this program is successful. In terms of next steps, we still think we'll be hitting the target by year end, and maybe a little bit further of getting the rule in the books. So we are working very hard to get that done. The rule is in the public domain. If you feel like you want to add to what's already there, you want to contribute, you can reach out to me, or you can comment. There's a way to comment. If you go to the website, you can comment there as well. But feel free to reach out to me, and I would be happy to engage you in that process. That's all I got. Thank you.
Karthik, thank you very much. I'll leave just a minute here if anyone has any questions for Karthik. Mike, I do see your question from very early on. I hope it was answered throughout the presentation, but feel free to restate if you need further clarification. All right. Well, before we do keep on going, I do want to remind anyone who has joined us since the beginning to go to the handout section and download the agenda today. Make sure that you have that agenda, that you upload it to the OffCert portal to get your PDHs for this webinar. And I do also want to promote some future upcoming workshops if you've been enjoying today's webinar, or if you still need to get some more free PDHs. Remember, all of ADEQ's PDHs are offered free of charge. On the week of October 28th, we have a wastewater treatment processes workshop. We'll have a couple different locations for that in Tucson, in Phoenix, in Flagstaff. So wherever you're at, hopefully you're able to get out to one of those in-person workshops. We also have an in-person math workshop in Flagstaff on November 8th. That will be very similar to the math workshop we recently had in Phoenix. So that'll be up in Flagstaff. On November 14th, we will be having another webinar on PFAS. And at some point in December, it's still a work in progress, we'll have a chemistry workshop. So make sure you are on our email list and you'll get regular reminders for all of those upcoming presentations and workshops and everything that you'll need to get those PDHs. At this point, we will take a 10-minute break. So we'll come back meeting our community liaisons at about 10:09, 10:10 we'll resume. So stretch your legs, get a drink, run to the bathroom, whatever you gotta do, and we will be back in 10. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and keep our webinar going here today. Up next, we have several of our community liaisons tag teaming this next presentation to give you an introduction to what they do. So I will pass screen control over to Lauren, and you are all welcome to take it away.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Manny Bowler. I am a community liaison for Apache, Navajo, and Gila counties, and I am the unit manager for this awesome team that's more like a family. We wanted to just briefly introduce what we do, and then kind of go through some of our successes and how we can help you all do the fine job that you're doing. So to start us off, I wanted to briefly share Deputy Director Peter's vision for ADEQ. She really wants us as an agency to be more present in the community. She wants us to meet you where you're at. So, and to participate in community events and expos and help you do your jobs better. If you're missing something, you can reach out to us. We can help you find it. We're an additional support to you. And so as we're doing that, we are in the community more and more, which is, my team absolutely loves that. We love being with you and being in the communities. Next slide, Lauren. So what is a liaison? Basically, it's just to kind of help bridge the gap between the agency and the community so that we're working together towards one vision, one goal, we have mutual understanding, and we're working together. And this program at ADEQ is almost 25 years old. It's been around a very long time, and I think everybody absolutely appreciates having one point of contact if you don't know where to go, because the agency is kind of big, sometimes hard to find the people that you're looking for. So that's kind of what our team does. One of the things that our team absolutely loves to do is to help problem solve. There's many examples we're going to show you towards the end where we're doing just that. It isn't just a quick phone call, hey, do you know how to find so-and-so, or do you know where I can get this answer or this question answered? But sometimes it's you guys are working on long systemic problems and you just don't know where to go, or you have issues and you need to find an advocate. Sometimes that's us, because we meet daily to talk about issues, and sometimes we can see trends in the communities and we'll try to find funding and try to find answers to these problems that you guys are working to solve. And the map. As you can see, the state's broken up into various sections, and I have the green. And I've been with the agency this second go around almost 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. And what I love to do is to go boating and work on community issues. My family lives up here in Eager, but I'm always found in Gila County, quite frequently at Roosevelt, enjoying the area. I'm going to pass the baton over to Lauren.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, just making sure. Thanks. My name is Lauren Hildebrand. I am the community liaison for Mojave, Coconino, and Yavapai counties, and I am based out of Parker, Arizona. And I'll let Gina introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. I am Gina Bunn. I am a community liaison for La Paz, Western Maricopa, and Yuma County. And one fun thing about me is I have a 15-month-old, as you can see in my background, a crib. So he is just a joy in my life. I am going to pass it on to Roxanne. Roxanne, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Roxanne. I cover Pinal County, but I live in Tucson, and I've been with the agency about 16 and a half years, and that whole time I've been based in the Tucson office. I'm on the opposite end of Gina. I have a 22-year-old daughter, so who has gone to all the Earth Day events since she was 5, and now has decided to not pursue a science degree because of it. she's over all the Earth Days. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin.
Thank you, Roxanne. My name is Aaron Tews. I am the community liaison for Southeast Arizona, which includes Pima, Santa Cruz, Cochise, Graham, and Greenlee counties. Fun fact about me is that I'm a graduate of the University of Arizona, which is very popular in all of those counties. So, and I will pass it to, we have Len on?
No, Len's not with us today,
Oh, okay.
but you can introduce
So I
what he
think we're
does
done.
if you want.
Well, Len is our tribal liaison and our ombudsman, and he's based out of Eastern Maricopa County.
Yes, and this QR code right here, as well as this link, is a direct link to all of our phone numbers and emails, and just a good thing to keep on your bookmarks bar if you ever have any questions. And back to Jen.
Thank you. And going back to what Lauren said, you can always search. Just type in on the search engine ADQ community liaisons will pop up, and we're happy to help. So I'd like to, tell you a little bit about our role as community liaisons. Again, my name is Gina. I am the Southwest Community Liaison, which again encompasses La Paz, Western Maricopa, and Yuma counties. As Manny said earlier, the community liaisons are spread throughout the state to properly cover the communities we serve. So thanks for listening to the roles of community liaisons as my team and I take you through our presentation and some projects we were or involved with regarding water subjects and so forth. Currently, ADQ has 6 community liaisons to cover all 15 counties. Our team can be a helpful resource with your environmental comments, questions, concerns. ADQ established the community liaison position in August of 2000, which Manny was saying it's about 25 years, so almost there. Leadership saw a need to bring advocacy and service to rural Arizona by placing knowledgeable and helpful staff so they can be closer to communities they serve, so we can have more frequent and direct contact with Arizonans. Among other things, our team coordinates with ADQ programs to address questions and concerns from local governments, regulated community, the public, citizen groups. We provide assistance or environmental permits needed, perform outreach on grant funding opportunities and new and existing ADQ regulatory programs and initiatives. The community liaisons, we regularly interact with all of ADQ programs and can help you find answers to any environmental questions or at least contact you with the right person. These could be on topics of water, wastewater, anything related to water quality. Our expertise doesn't just work with water subjects. We do work throughout divisions in ADQ as such: air quality, waste management, recycling, underground storage tanks, and so on. So we really do go the mile to help in any way we can. So please reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, concerns. We'd be very happy to help you. I'm gonna pass it on to Roxanne to show where we work.
Hi, again, I'm Roxanne. And so we work with, and this is just a quick glance of who we work with. We work with municipalities, counties, nonprofits, as well as other partners. We, over the past, as we've been saying, this past 2 decades, past 25 years, with the CL program, we've been able to build on our relationships and interact with each of our groups as they need. We've grown our relationships with each of our partners so that we can best assist them and solve our problems together. As Manny said, we start hearing things from our communities and we can bring it back to the agency and help solve problems. I'm going to hand it over to Lauren now.
Thanks, Roxanne. So the community liaisons are not just, we don't stay in our offices or stay at home all day. We're always out in the community, as you can see from some of these pictures. We have a program here at ADEQ called the Green Team, where staff are actually encouraged to go out and participate in volunteer events, community events, outreach events. So for example, Project WET, who some of you may be familiar with, is a program through the University of Arizona where they go out and every school year, all the 4th graders in a certain town or region all get together and identify funding to where they set up 4 different lesson plans where they can learn about water and how to be good water stewards in Arizona. So we heavily participate in those, especially the ones that are in our regions and especially the rural ones that may need a little bit more support. So that's just one example of one of the events that our Green Team goes to, but we do trash cleanups with other nonprofits and community organizations, and even household hazardous waste events, things like that, that may not apply to the water folks on this call, but there's certainly lots of water events that we're involved in, like trash cleanups along rivers and creeks. And as you can see in this bottom left photo, there's a pretty packed room of people. So as part of what Manny mentioned earlier about the agency and Deputy Director Peters' vision for engagement for the agency, we have, our unit is tasked with implementing the engagement strategy that ADEQ has developed. So it's not just a permit that goes out and gets issued anymore. There's a lot more thought that goes into them, and more feedback from the community is sought before making decisions and moving forward. So we help in implementing those plans and meeting with the community in a format that aligns with the purpose of the permit and the meeting and so on. So if there's a controversial permit in your area, usually we'll probably step in and try and explain to the community before they draw any conclusions. And so there's also a few photos here of people holding awards, which is our voluntary environmental stewardship program, which is a great program that some of you may also be familiar with. And if you're not, I'll have Aaron go ahead and explain what the VESP program is.
Thank you, Lauren. Like she said, I'll be explaining our VESP program, which is the Voluntary Environmental Stewardship Program. So there's multiple different levels to this award, and the award recognizes really any kind of facility for different things. So for example, the Copper is a one-time award, and that award recognizes any time a facility goes above and beyond the statutory requirements to do something cool. So for example, I went to a elementary school in Tucson where they had a really cool hydroponics program they were working on with the University of Arizona. And they had created a bunch of lessons for their kids that went well and beyond anything that they needed to do for curriculum. So they received a Copper Award. Another example, in Nogales, there was a school that they worked on to get more compliant with their arsenic and copper in the drinking water there. So that was also an award. The bronze award is for 3 years of compliance. So if you have a facility that's been completely compliant with all 80 state and federal regulations, and that could be in water or waste or any of these sectors, you can get a bronze VESP award. The silver is for a 3-year recognition available to organizations that have made a measurable environmental impact improvement and commit to measuring continuous improvement while a member of the program. And for the silver award, you have to apply. Anything past bronze, you have to apply for. And so once you make that application, you're eligible for the silver, gold, and platinum. The gold award is a 3-year recognition available to organizations that have met the silver standard and are committed to developing and maintaining an environmental management system, or an EMS, within 3 years of membership of the program. And then the Platinum Award, which is the highest award, is a 3-year recognition available to any facility or organization that has met the gold level standard, has a functioning EMS with at least one fully completed audited EMS cycle, and also commits to community outreach, again, beyond regulatory requirements. So this award is really beneficial, has a lot of good impacts in the community. One is that it builds community trust in these systems. I guess you could compare it to like when you see the A+ from the health service on the door, like you want to be able to trust your water system. If they're getting good marks from the state, then that helps people recognize what's a good system in their community. The other thing is that it also is us recognizing compliance and other job well done throughout the state. So it helps us build relationships as well. And with that, I will pass it on to our next presenter.
Okay. So we have a couple of projects we wanted to just mention here. I think we'll go with the lead service line inventory because I'm sure that's your favorite, right? You've been dealing with that for the last year and a half. The CL team was asked to help the water systems get access to that, making sure that our smaller systems who may or may not have heard about the program or know what it was about or a little hesitant to join would understand that. So the water team actually reached out to my team and said, hey, will you help us? So we made phone calls and visited folks to help educate and make sure they understood what the program was about and that they really wanted to be on that bandwagon and not miss out. And then as far as if you're ever doing a project that you're getting funding from WIFA for, you might want to reach out to our team and see if there's a way we can write a letter of support for the effort that you're doing. In my area, Eager reached out to me because they were applying for some WIFA funding to replace their aging meter infrastructure. It was a water resiliency kind of grant that they received money from to help save money, to help save water, groundwater, and improve their own efficiency. And so we were able to write a letter of support, which helped them actually get the grant funding from WIFA. So those are some of the ideas, some of the things that you can maybe think of how we can engage with us more so that you can do your jobs even better. Lauren, did you want to talk about PFAS?
Yeah, like Manny mentioned, it's not just local, it can be statewide. So an example of some statewide outreach we did for water or assisted with was, as you all may know, the PFAS rulemaking and the new MCL for that. Last year, we were able to connect our drinking water team with each county's board of supervisors, where we were able to present a quick little 7-minute or 10-minute video. I forget, we cut it down a little bit, but you guys have probably all seen it, just giving a high level overview that the public will maybe be able to better understand of what PFAS is, what the rules are going to mean, and just trying to give everyone as much information as we possibly can before adding more rules and sampling and such to their municipalities and unincorporated areas systems. So that was a successful outreach initiative that we were able to assist with in educating the community. So you guys hopefully don't have to as hard. And I'll let Gina talk a little bit about Jones Co-op as well in Yuma.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Manny, for explaining a little bit of what we do locally and statewide. Jones Co-op is a public water system that serves about 17 people just outside of Yuma city limits. The water system has been exceeding the standard for arsenic levels for several years. In the past, ADQ installed point of use devices in each home, but as you all may know, that public use devices need an annual filter change, which definitely did not occur, yearly. And old filters without proper maintenance can increase concentrations of contaminants in water. So it was back to the drawing board. We met with Yuma County Improvement District, City of Yuma, funding specialists, and executive leadership for problem solving. We came up with a few solutions and cost assessments to bring forth to the residents of Jones Co-op on what they can do. Long story short, all residents will need to agree on the same solution to move forward with a project. At the end goal of supplying residents with safe drinking water at minimal cost to them. So we were able to do that with success in providing funding to complete this project. So it is ongoing right now, but we have a positive future for it.
Here are just a few more examples. We had the the wastewater treatment roadshow. Some of you may have been notified about that, where we tried to target some rural communities and explain how these bigger municipal systems work. So we had Wendy Eikenberry, who's now the unit manager for our groundwater inspections and compliance unit. So that's just more on the wastewater side of things. Just trying to do outreach, and hopefully in the future we'll do some more and for some drinking water topics and partner with Ebony and her team on those. And also there's some amazing federal programs such as the EPA Water TA, which you guys may also be familiar with, that pretty much everyone can apply for, and they've encouraged Arizona and the liaisons to try and be an advocate for the program, because I think there was something like $50 billion in funding available through 2027. So if WIFA is not working out for some reason, EPA Water TA also helps identify funding, as well as the technical assistance and helping write up applications as well, and just problem solve any issues that your system may be having. So we've been successful in getting a decentralized system project in the program, but we'd love to see Arizona take advantage of this program for some drinking water systems as well, like with Aaron in Town of Superior.
Thank you, Lauren, for that segue. Yes, so the Town of Superior, Clifton, and actually it was Town of Pima, Duncan as well was involved, but the entire copper corridor, how we call it, with many towns where they rely on copper mining as a significant environmental, or sorry, a significant economic factor. A lot of these towns are rural. They have a lot of similar issues with both economic and environmental issues. So I brought together mayors, town managers, and other officials from these towns. It was almost kind of a summit, you could call it, where we discussed issues surrounding the, these different towns and how they could maybe strategize and work on these issues together. And I think it's always good to introduce people and build those relationships, because they can then lean on one another. Some of these issues included like blight, what happens when a mine pulls out and becoming self-sustaining, like both economically, and then, the environmental issues that stem from poor economic development. There was a discussion of how you could use tourism, new modes of like transportation. So increasing like airports and flight training is something that Superior is doing. There was new ways of training young adults. So Superior was offering things like automotive training at their government building, and really trying to make these communities, again, self-sustaining. So that was kind of the purpose of the meeting. It was a fantastic meeting where a lot of people were introduced to new loans and grant opportunities as well. People that didn't know about their like local government organizations or local like nonprofits and philanthropy organizations were introduced to that. So that's just one example, I think, of how the CL team can be helpful. Connecting individuals is a huge part of our job. So we are always looking to either connect individuals with our agency and what we can offer, but also connecting partners in our region. And with that, I will pass it to, I believe, Gina.
Thank you, Aaron. So there are operator training opportunities at ADEQ. In the past, some community liaisons held practice exams at various locations throughout Arizona. Although it was nice for operators to see what questions may be on the operator test, there was still a need for training. So shortly after Ebony joined ADEQ, she partnered with certified operators to provide training for water, wastewater operational math opportunities. And this is for all grade levels. The picture in the middle of the slide was when Ebony and one of the trainers who has a 4x4 provided training in Yuma. And this was a great opportunity for some of these local operators to really dive into some of the math problems they have to calculate through their operator tests. When we had these old tests, they were quite old actually, we would try to give as much practice as possible. We were not able to give these tests out to individuals, and so some of us partnered with others. And during this Yuma training, someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I work for a prison. Can I have your old training material?" And I said, "Yes, here you go." So I gave it all to him, and now Ebony has been continuing these training opportunities for operators. I'm going to pass it on to Manny for Gila County.
So as you can see, this slide was mostly about wastewater and economic development so that smaller communities can find revenue to address their infrastructure needs, right? It's like the chicken or the egg. Are you out of compliance because you just don't do your jobs right? Which is not true. It's mostly because you don't have the funds to upgrade or improve your system, take advantage of those grants that are there, or even loans, right, that are there because of the economics. And systems age and they need to be constantly replaced and updated, and it's just it's hard. And one of the things with water is that we're pumping more and more, and so the emphasis is also on groundwater. And I was working on a project with Gila County to address the cesspools in their area, which you might have some of those in your area. And if you do, I would highly recommend you reach out to your community liaison, because WIFA has created a new funding stream based on my cesspool remediation project. Gila County has something like 5,000 cesspools in their area, and that doesn't even count the aging on sites, right? The septic tanks that are 30, 40 years old, 20 years old, that may or may not be operating efficiently anymore, and maybe even not being compliant. And all of that leachate going into the ground will eventually hit drinking water. And then that leaves the water operators to try to figure out how to remove the pollutants that are in the water. So the WIFA loan program, it's a forgivable loan program that we created. Your area can apply for that, and any cesspools that might be in your area can be remediated. The county or another nonprofit that is working on environmental issues can apply for this forgivable loan. It's $125,000 a year, renewable every 2 years, $250,000. And all that the entity has to do is to be able to show that they've removed a non-point source pollutant, a cesspool, aging septic tanks they can show that it's having an impact on the groundwater. And so I think that's a really cool program. We're working with Gila County to finalize the pilot. There's new contract language that needs to be approved by WIFA, and they're working through that at the moment. But all counties are eligible for these funds. So I highly recommend that you reach out to one of us or to your WIFA counterpart that you work with and ask about this fund, so that you can take care of the drinking water issues that you might be impacting you, because you know that you have septic tanks that are impacting your area. In Star Valley, this is a concern right now. There's some perched waters, and the wells are not deep enough, and they're tapping into that perched water and working on some of these things. It's all part of that, right? The septic tanks and the leaking and the cesspools, they're impacting your ability to provide quality, safe drinking water. So if there's a way that my team and our team at ADQ can help you find funding to address some of those issues, I highly recommend you reach out to us. You are providing the drinking water, but the cost to some of your issues could be others. If we can help you address those concerns, then it will make your job so much easier. Here's our contact information. Again, if you just type in, if you go to Google or wherever, you just type in AZDQ Community Liaisons, it pops up, but here's the code that you can click on and get our information. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to add before we wrap up? Ebony, do you have anything you'd like us to focus on? Are there any questions we'd like to answer?
No, I think you did a really good high-level overview, but yes, thank you for all of your work. The community liaisons are also very instrumental for your trainings and your outreach and contacting you, spreading out the information that the officer program wants to be able to reach out to areas that, you know, we may not see like the CLs do. So thank you very much for your work.
Sure, we like to think that we're your call a friend, right? When you get into a pickle, you can call a friend. We are there for you guys. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, community liaisons. Happy to have you here today. Thank you for all the great information. For our attendees, if you have any questions or you think of any questions down the road, don't hesitate to ask them. We'll get you some answers for sure. With that, we will go on to our last presentation for today. We'll be giving you some information on water sampling collection procedures from Marcy Payne with Legend. So Marcy, if you are ready to go, I will give you screen control here.
Ready.
coming in a little choppy, Marcy.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little grainy or windy sounding, but
Can you see me as
yes, we can see your screen.
well? Okay. I don't know what to do about the audio. It might be the AC going in my office.
I guess you could go ahead and try to get started. If the microphone's pretty close to you, maybe try backing off from it a little bit, but I'll stop you if we can't understand.
Okay. Yeah, definitely let me know how the microphone's doing here. So my name's Marcy Payne. I work for Legend Technical Services. We're an environmental laboratory that specializes in compliance laboratory analysis. Our main lab, which I'm here in my office in the laboratory, it's up in North Phoenix. We also do have a satellite down in Tucson. How is that? I mean, I want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay.
It is pretty, I mean, I can understand you, but it's pretty distorted sounding.
I don't know what to do about that one. Well, I guess I'll go in and hopefully it'll clear.
Yeah, we'll keep going for now.
Okay. So for compliance laboratory analysis, it does require ADHS certification for those analysis. Some utilities do have their own in-house, for instance, for some short-term analysis where they do have their own ADHS certifications. Part of that certification does include having ADHS come in, do audits, and we have a quality assurance, quality control manager, a director of operations, all the laboratory managers, they're involved with all these audits. It does go right down to that chain of custody that you, the sampler, are actually filling out. So I do go into some details on making sure that chain of custody is properly filled out, because if we get audited, they're going to go through all that data, all the laboratory reports, and they go down to that chain of custody. If there's a gap in time, those compliance reports are not going to hold up in court. So it's very important that you, when you are filling out the chain of custody, that it is properly filled out. And we will go into some of that.
Marcy, can I pause you for one more second?
Yeah.
I don't know if you do have a plugged in mic, if you're able to maybe try unplugging it and plugging it back in, or if it's the laptop mic, or reset it in some way.
Let me take a look.
And thank you, attendees, as well. It's not a real webinar without a little bit of audio issues.
Yeah, I don't know what to do here. It's just a laptop, and it doesn't have a speaker connected to it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Marcy, can you call in?
That's a good idea.
How about we give the group about 5 minutes and we can see on your audios from Marcy's audio.
Good plan. Everyone, if you want to take 5 at 10:55, we'll get going here.
Where is Marcy? Let's see.
Can you hear me? Ebony?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So where do I call in? Of course, yesterday I used my personal laptop to try. I come into the office today and I've got the work laptop. And it is what it is. I mean, I don't know how to. I've used this before.
I'll send the invite.
Do I hit phone call here?
Let me resend your invite, Marcy, and right at the bottom of that invitation's a call-in option. Go ahead and check your email. Marcy, I just muted you on your end, just so when you call in, the separate audio will show up. Yes, Brad, let me get that to you. Let me give you a call. Oh boy. Oh my gosh.
Hello?
Oh, sorry, Bram.
You're good.
All right. I think Marcy made it in.
Can you hear me? I just called in.
Yes. You sound much better now.
Okay. So can you see my slideshow too?
Yes, that is still up
Okay.
on the screen.
Okay, so I think we could go ahead and I had to turn off phone call onto this little thing.
Okay. Well, that was a good solution. Thank you, those in the chat with some ideas as well. Marcy, if you just want to restart right back at the top of your presentation, we will give it a round 2, and I think we'll be able to understand you much better this time around. Thank you for your patience, attendees.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, just to start over where everyone can hear me better, my name's Marcy Payne. I work for Legend Technical Services, a compliance environmental laboratory. Our main laboratory is located up in North Phoenix. We do also have a satellite down in Tucson. Licensure and certification is very, very important when we are talking about compliance laboratory testing. It does include audits. We provide proficiency evaluation samples. There's training and technical resources available. Let me close this down. Next slide. Why isn't it going? Oh my gosh, how many technical issues am I going to have here? Okay, so our governing authorities in the laboratory would be ADQ and EPA. Working together to achieve our goal. So why does the laboratory follow standard operating procedures step by step? Why do we want our operators to collect the samples appropriately so that we can provide you the quality data that is needed for compliance? Ultimately, it's the protection of public health and the environment. So because you all are virtually on this phone call, I'm giving a little brief laboratory tour of our laboratory up in North Phoenix. This is our sample receiving, storage, and bottle prep area. In sample receiving, operators come into our doors. They have their coolers packed in ice. There's temperature blanks inside the cooler. They're going to bring the cooler up to the counter. The laboratory sample receiving staff will take the temperature, ensure that all the temperatures are within range. Typically, most samples are 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. Bacteria samples are 0 to 10 degrees Celsius. Metals do not have any temperature requirements. They're logged into our LIMS, which is Laboratory Information Management System. We can track that sample throughout the entire process, from when it's logged in, brought back to the laboratory, analyzed, reviewed. Then samples are delivered back to the laboratory. Administration project management. So when you are set up as a client, you're going to be assigned a project manager. They're responsible for your bottle orders, for getting those delivered on time, for reviewing your chain of custody, making sure that everything's been entered into the computer properly, to generating those reports, reviewing the reports.
Marcy, one more time, I'm going to grab you. It looks like we might not have your presentation as well. It might have. Oh, let me try to add you as the presenter one more time here. There we go. I see your PowerPoint and your mouse move.
Yeah, it popped off. I did see that. Hang on. Slideshow. Okay.
Perfect. Good to go. Thank you.
We're back. Okay, so project management. Again, you have accounting, human resources, and 5 full-time project managers that are managing their clients. We have 5 laboratories under one roof, one of them being an organic chemistry laboratory. So this is a large laboratory. It's a lot more of the hands-on type of instrumentation that is used. Let's see. They're setting up TSS, TDS. They do the nitrates, oil and grease, TDS, BODs. Then we go into semi-volatiles laboratory, or SOCs. Some of these particular they're all done on instrumentation. The top left picture is actually utilized for our PFAS. That's I think everybody has been talking about PFAS lately. There's a big extraction process that's involved, and adherence to making sure that because it's in parts per trillion, nanograms per liter, we want to ensure that we do not have any contamination within the laboratory. And I'll go into sampling procedures later after we do our little virtual tour. This is the metals laboratory. We have 2 ICPs, 2 ICP-MSs. ICP is for your 200.7 metals. ICP-MS, that has the mass spectrometry, that is for the 200.8 metals. The volatiles laboratory, again, a lot of this is done with instrumentation. For volatiles, it's your 524 VOCs, your 524 THMs, and 624 for wastewater, 8260 for wastewater as well. So microbiology, this laboratory is really busy. Due to short hold times for microbiology, samples are promptly logged in and delivered to the sample receiving to the micro department. So for bacteria sampling, for total coliform E. coli and drinking water, we utilize the 100 ml IDEX container, and the hold time is 30 hours for drinking water. For E. coli, for wastewater, it's 8-hour hold time. So when you're getting ready to go collect samples, just make sure that you have extras on hand. We're all human. You could drop a container. You might not even see that it has a hairline crack in it, so you do want to ensure that you do have extras on hand. If you drop a lid, grab a new one. Avoid collecting samples in rainy, windy conditions or near any excessive vegetation. I tell operators, if you've got a lot of weeds growing around where your sampling site is, get those all cleaned up. One little speck of pollen coming from those, in the air anywhere could cause a detection in your sample. Be an aseptic sampler. So you just want to make sure that your hands are clean. You can wear gloves, but again, you're grabbing the gloves with your fingers, so they're not sterile. The gloves are just going to protect you. So again, just make sure that you're not out with, you do not want to be the source of that contamination for that sample. Remove any aerators, hoses, filters, and disinfect the tap or sampling apparatus. So when I do these presentations for a lot of clients, I say, what do you do for disinfection on your tap? And it varies. There's no standard operating procedure to disinfect your tap. Some operators just flush. Hey, as long as you've been fine, not getting any hits, that's working for you. From the laboratory's perspective, we would recommend a diluted chlorine or bleach and water solution, maybe a 50-50. You can spray the tap. I've had operators say that they've used like the Clorox wipes. I don't recommend that because sometimes you can get some of that, the fibers on there. That fiber, if that were to not, if you flush your tap and that fiber falls into the sterile container, you're going to have a contamination issue. So that's why we recommend just kind of the bleach 50-50 with water to disinfect that tap. Flushing is very, very important. Some operators use isopropyl alcohol. That's okay. However, we kind of go back to the chlorine for disinfection. Just making sure that you flush the line really well, 2 to 5 minutes, then turn down to a slow, steady stream. So completely discard all the shrink wrap. There is a little red tab on the container. You want to make sure that that pulls all the way down, and you don't want to leave a ring around the neck of the bottle. And sometimes, because you name it, we see it. We see these containers come back in with the shrink wrap still on the lid. We see the plastic still around the neck. You may not see it around the neck, but you do want to just make sure that that strip pulls all the way through, throw it all the way out. The laboratory, if you don't see it, they will. And they do have to flag that. that could be a cause of contamination. So carefully open the lid without touching any part of the lid or the lip or threads on the container. Keep the lid face down. You don't want to hold that up in the air and collect any dust or pollen that could cause contamination. Collect the sample as quickly as you can. Replace the lid immediately. Again, when you're putting that lid on, make sure that your fingers don't touch any part of that thread. Fill the sample above the 100 ml line, but do not overfill. Samples do have to have some head space. Now this comes about last fall. We had a ADHS audit at our Tucson lab, and ADHS in our standard operating procedures with the method was that the sample volume could be plus or minus 2 of the 100 ml. They said during the audit, no, it needs to be 100. So the line on the bottle says 100, but the certificate of that comes with all of our IDEX containers, they come in a big box, 100 in a box. We receive about 15 boxes a week. That certificate of quality for the whole lot that comes from IDEX, which says that it has sodium thiosulfate, that it's a sterile container, that it's sealed, and that the 100 ml line is plus or minus 2. So technically, if that line on your bottle is already at 98.0 ml, when you fill it up to the line, your meniscus is below, you're going to be well below 100. So because of these findings, ADEQ actually just revised the whole, or they added a new flag, which is also called a note or a qualifier. So what those notes are or qualifiers is going to indicate something that happened with the sample that has been noted at the lab. For instance, if the sample that comes into the laboratory and the level is at the line, our laboratory will actually put it on the microlab. We'll put it on the scale. If it's less than 100 ml, we have to flag it an N8. And N8 is, we used to flag it a Q9, which was green, which was acceptable by ADQ as a flag. However, now we have a new flag called an N8. It's red and it is not acceptable for compliance. I do have, this actually was just revised 2 weeks ago, so it's kind of hot off the presses. So just ensure when you're collecting these samples that you go above the line. Go to the shoulder of the bottle as indicated on the slide. But again, you can't go too high, so it's kind of the sweet spot. You can't go into the neck, can't go too low. Ensuring that you write your documentation on the bottle label and match the information on the chain of custody. This is very important for a busy commercial laboratory. We receive hundreds and hundreds of samples a day. We have 4 people in our sample receiving department. Someone might go on break or on lunch and take over. If there is a container that does not have a client ID, sample time, or date, we cannot assume anything in the laboratory. So you're going to have to go resample. The information on your chain of custody, date and time, and location needs to match with the label on the bottle. So again, that does happen where people just bring them in and think, well, they can fill it out. Well, no, we have so many people working that you have to make sure that you have proper documentation. And the whole, why I do these presentations are just to help avoid the laboratory having to call you to resample. So hopefully someone gets a little bit of something out of all of this. Make sure that you do not put labels or custody seals on the actual lid. Custody seals can be placed on the cooler, or if you're putting all your sample containers inside a bag or a baggie, a Ziploc bag, you can put the custody seal on that. Just don't put them on top of the lid, because as you can imagine, if we're trying to pick apart a label off the top of the lid and open that bottle, that could cause contamination. Bag samples to prevent water invasion from melted ice. If you are a system that is far from the laboratory that you're bringing your samples to, put them in a bag, then pack them with ice. We've opened up coolers, pulled out containers, and the whole bottom is cracked because they just shoved them in the ice. So be aware of that too. You want to handle them with care to help prevent that. Carefully place samples in a clean cooler. And if you are a smaller system, you have operators that are collecting samples for drinking water and for wastewater, label coolers differently. So have your drinking water cooler, that's where those drinking water samples go into. Don't mix and match. You do not want to be putting your drinking water samples into your wastewater cooler. So just have those labeled. You always want to use wet ice to avoid ice formation. I was actually just talking to someone last week, and they said that they were using a Yeti ice pack, and it froze their samples. We don't recommend using any ice packs at all, especially Yeti would really freeze them. You definitely want to use just ice, wet ice. And you utilize a temperature blank to ensure that samples arrive between 0 and 10 degrees Celsius. This is for bacteria. All sample analysis does not have a temperature requirement within the first 2 hours of sampling. So if you are collecting a sample, getting it right to the lab within 2 hours, you don't have to worry about getting the ice, making sure that they come down to temperature. However, if you are on the way to the laboratory and you know it's going to be just over 2 hours, you're collecting a sample at a hot source. It's in the summer. And you might think, I don't even know if it's under 10 degrees Celsius. I recommend, if that's the case, go to lunch. Keep it packed in the cooler with the ice. Go to lunch, drive around a little bit just to ensure that those temperatures come down. Once you relinquish it into the laboratory and we take a temperature and it's too high, that you're going to have to go resample. We can't give it back to you and say, go drive around. The melting point of the white powder, which is the preservative in our IDEX sterile containers for bacteria, is 118.9 degrees Fahrenheit. Do you believe that our vehicles get to that temperature? Yes, they definitely do, especially here in Phoenix, even in almost October. So if that powder preservative in your containers has melted, it is still acceptable condition, because what it will do is it'll kind of dry up and look like a salt stains on the inside of the bottle. But again, they're still acceptable as long as they still have the shrink wrap on the lid and they're haven't been utilized. Residual chlorine greater than 15 parts per million will react with the reagent and require invalidation. So 15 parts per million, that's quite a lot more than your residuals that you're reading. We have seen this happen in the laboratory. And typically why this can happen is that if you have a line repair, construction might be doing some work on some of your lines, and they do a chlorination to disinfect. And the sample was grabbed without flushing really well. So just be aware that if you do have construction, you have chlorination to disinfect that line, that you flush really well before you collect that sample. So this is what it looks like for an invalid bacteria sample, which is a reaction to too much chlorine. So we add the media, it's in a pill pack, it's a powder. And, the whole point of our laboratory is we want to try to grow bacteria to see if it's present. And it'll immediately foam up and turn brown. The test itself for bacteria is an enzymatic color change. We're looking for a sample after it's incubated, to turn yellow. It could be slight yellow or dark yellow. Obviously, if it's immediately foaming up and turning brown or even black, we're not going to be able to see a color change. So there's no point of putting it in the incubator. It's invalid client will have to resample. So does anybody see what's wrong with this? I know I can't hear everyone, but what it is ice formation. And some possible causes can be from collecting samples with that are cold samples. Normally well, I would say it's not normal, but it does happen where we do receive these samples with ice formation. And if you can imagine, this is not going to be acceptable because the ice is actually could kill the bacteria that we want to try to grow. So if we see this, it will be flagged. We typically see situations like this where the samples are coming from a higher altitude. Normally, it's wastewater samples that have salts and TDS in them. Next, so what's wrong with this? This would be the shrink wrap. So you can see these, if it's positive, it'll get an N1 and a Q1. Those are our qualifiers or notes or flags. Does anybody see what's wrong with this one? It's around the neck, and that's the shrink wrap is still around the neck of the sample. So again, if positive, this will get an N1 and Q1. And what's wrong here? This sample is too low. Again, it used to be a Q9, which was acceptable flag. Now it's an N8. And what's wrong here? This one's a trick question. There's nothing wrong. The sodium thiosulfate, actually, the powder form, it melted and then dried back up in the sample container. And you can see it's still sealed up, so these are acceptable to utilize. And what's wrong here? This one, the sample is too high. That's an A7. Think about the fact that we have to add the media into the sample container, so we do have to have that headspace. And what's wrong here? This is down the middle of the container. There's a little cut. So this one has the hairline crack. And if, for instance, it did leak lower than a 100 mil, it'd be a Q9 or N8. So this was what was revised this month. This is the ADQ acceptable matrix for flags. Again, under Q, you can see where the Q9, which was sample too low, was green. And now it's an N8, which is red. The chain of custody. So the most important thing on here is that you are at the proper location. This is an example for your RTCR location. Many times, if you're a client and you've got 30 different RTCRs that you're going to, we do pre-fill out chain of custodies with all of that data in the dark yellow on the slide. In the bright yellow is what you, the sampler, has to be responsible for filling out properly. The date, we want it in month, /day, /year. 24-hour clock or military time. The reason for that is someone might write 900. Well, now we have to put that aside, send that to the project manager. They're going to have to follow up with the client to go, is this 0900, 9 a.m., or is this 9 p.m.? So utilizing the 24-hour clock is a lot easier and will save some issues down the road. Also, relinquish by and receive by at the bottom. So if you're the sampler, you collected a sample at 9 a.m. I wrote the date and the time, 0900. I have this in my custody still. I'm going to drive it to the laboratory, or I'm going to go put it in the lockbox in my cooler in the laboratory. That is when I am going to relinquish it. So then you will sign at the bottom that it was relinquished, same with the month, 24-hour clock, and then it will be received at the exact time. Say, for instance, you're walking into the laboratory at 11 o'clock. You're going to sign 11 o'clock. We are going to accept that sample at 11 o'clock. We're not going to look at the watch and go, well, in that 1 minute has changed. I'm not going to write 11:01 because we cannot have a gap in time. If you had that gap in time, then they could say that the samples could be tampered with in that 1 minute. So that's why it's very important, even if you're handing it over to a coworker, and they're going to drive it to the laboratory, making sure that you have no gap in time between when it's relinquished and received. So drinking water compliance reporting. In July of this year, our laboratory does not provide any state forms any longer. Since 2018, we've been utilizing CMDP, which is the Compliance Monitoring Data Portal. So this is the information that we need on our chain of custodies in order to put in the information so that it'll be uploaded to the CMDP. It was also used for state forms too, but everything is all going into the CMDP now. And the CIDWIS site is where you can see your uploaded results. Clients also get a copy of the report typically before they even are uploaded. For RTCR, total coliform samples, they must be taken from the distribution site. This is just more information about where to take your repeats if you have repeats, and groundwater triggered. So we're going to move on from just the bacteria sampling and go into the general sampling. So a lot of other containers, you have plastic, you have glass, you have clear, you have amber. Those are based on what the operating procedures are in the laboratory for analyzing a certain analyte. So for instance, it will say for a metal, for arsenic, that the sample needs to be collected in a nitric acid preserved container, or it can be collected in non-preserved and preserved at the laboratory within 14 days. So we have to follow these standard operating procedures from the very beginning of sample collection. If a sample is brought in and it's in the wrong container, it's going to be flagged. If it's for compliance, it's typically not going to be acceptable. For general sampling, for a lot of these, or for all types of samples, you want to make sure that you never dump out any preservatives, that you do not overfill your sample to rinse out the preservative. You do want to provide headspace, except for vials. And you want to document on your container as well as your chain of custody. Pack samples in enough ice to keep the temperature between 2 to 6 degrees Celsius. And samples need to be returned to the laboratory within at least half of the hold time, except for metals. However, if you've got a bottle order and you have metals with your bottle order, don't put it aside and say, oh, well, Mercy said that one doesn't have temperature requirement. Keep them all together. It can go in the cooler with all of your other samples, because we have had clients that have tried to do that and accidentally left that metals bottle and it didn't get returned to the laboratory. The chemical preservatives are required for the test being performed. Keep preservatives out of reach of children. Avoid skin contact. We do recommend wearing safety glasses and gloves. If you come into contact with any preservative, immediately flush the area thoroughly with water. Avoid getting preservatives on clothing or other sensitive surfaces. And a complete copy of the SDS is available from your laboratory. So lead and copper samples, it's 1 liter. For residential, you obviously do not want to give them any nitric acid. It's a 1 liter non-preserved for residential. If you are collecting, obviously, as a certified operator, you can utilize the nitric acid preserved. part of the lead and copper analysis, we must have 1 full liter. So it does need to be filled all the way to the top. This is another sample that can get an N8. And again, an N8 is not acceptable for compliance. It's hard to get back some of these samples from your customer, let alone making sure that they're filling them all the way up. So I know it's going to be kind of a challenge, but do try to, make note of that in your instructions if you are giving them these sample containers non-preserved to your customer, to make sure that they are filled up completely. Some other types of samples would be the metals, nitrates, fluoride, asbestos, cyanide, radiochemicals. These are all just other examples of some IOCs. Hold times are, essentially between 24 hours to 6 months for metals. These containers, you're just going to fill up towards the top. Again, you're not going to overfill or fill up too much. You do want to leave a little bit of headspace in these plastic containers. And that's simply because you don't want to make a mess when you're trying to put the cap back on, or if we're trying to open up the sample container, we want to make sure that it doesn't make a mess. Some examples of semi-volatile organic compounds, or SVOCs, amber. So amber is going to protect it from light. That's for dioxin. 504, 505s. So we are going to go into vial sampling a little bit through here. These are just some more examples. Your 525 for pesticides. If you see in your bottle order a vial of HCl or a vial of sulfuric acid or a dropper with HCl and it's not attached to anything, definitely call the project manager and say, hey, I've got this vial of acid. Well, what those are for is for a field preservative. In that container, the sample container could have a preservative as well. So you're preserving the sample and you're field preserving the sample. And that's part of the standard operating procedure. When the samples do come to the laboratory, they're able to know based on the pH, basically, if the sample has been field preserved. So if you forget and think, oh, well, I'll just send it into the laboratory, we're going to end up having to call you back and say, well, if this is for compliance, it's going to be flagged. And this, for instance, depending on what the actual sample is for or the analysis is for, it might not be, you would probably have to go resample. So definitely be aware of that. These are just some more examples of different containers. And for some wastewater or pretreatment, industrial pretreatment, we get a lot of the oil and grease. Those ones, anytime you see a green label, we have this sticker, for instance, it's a green sticker on our oil and grease jars. Those are actually preserved with HCl. But on that sticker, you always want to read it, make sure that that you're adhering to what we have to do with these. On that sticker, it says to fill them half full. So we can only have that half full. Cyanide, that one, if it's a chlorinated source, you do need to dechlorinate. With dechlorination, we utilize sodium thiosulfate. So for instance, for cyanide, you will receive, well, if it's a chlorinated source, you will receive a kit. If it's coming right from groundwater, no treatment at all, it's just a sodium hydroxide preserve container. However, for cyanide, for a chlorinated source, it gets a kit. So there's 1 liter container with sodium thiosulfate. You'll fill that up and you're going to invert it 5 times and then pour into the sodium hydroxide preserve container. And that's what is submitted to the laboratory. And these are just some other examples on this slide of where to fill up non-preserved sulfide, has sodium hydroxide and zinc acetate, just examples of all the different types of preserved type of containers. So going into vial sampling, these are your 40 ml vials. They're for VOCs, SOCs. You want to make sure that you flush really well, 2 to 5 minutes, kind of just like for any type of sampling. Then you want to turn it down to a slow stream to prevent any air bubbles. Everyone has different instances, different situations that you're coming to. I've had operators that have called me and said, you know, my sampling source is almost cloudy white because there's so much air in it. And it's almost impossible to get the samples collected and get them to the laboratory without developing a huge air bubble. So there's a couple little suggestions that I can give for that. One would be when that sample is collected, you can kind of tap on the actual vial to try to get those bubbles off the inside. You can put a little bit in the cap, then cap it, giving an extra little tight twist to the lid. That sometimes will help as well. With vials, there's always multiples that are sent to the client. For instance, for your 524s, there's 3 sample containers. So if you see in your bottle order that you have multiple bottles of the same bottle, make sure they're all filled up and returned back to the laboratory. The reason for that is that one of them could break, one could develop air bubbles, maybe a run fails, and we still have backup. So that's why you definitely want to make sure that everything is sent back. And same thing for wastewater. For you have BOD TSS. You'll get a 1 liter non-preserved plus another 250 or 500 ml non-preserved. Definitely fill those both up, because sometimes depending on influent effluent, we're utilizing a whole 1 liter for the BOD, and then we need to have that other bottle for the TSS or any other type of analysis. For the vial sampling, you want to make sure that you do not dump out the preservative or rinse the vials. For drinking water, for our VOCs and THMs, you'll get a hydrochloric acid dropper, and that's only for field preserving for drinking water. So wastewater, when we're doing VOCs, you don't have to worry about field preserving, but we do for drinking water. So we're going to fill up the sample container to about 1/2 to 3/4 of the way full. And then we're going to add 5 drops of our HCl in the vial. Then you're going to continue to fill up the vial with the sample, but making sure that you do not overflow. That's why it's important to make sure it's on a very slow stream, so that you can make sure that you can get a dome on the top of that container. If you can see in the picture, it's pointed to that. Or it's also called a reverse meniscus. You're going to screw the lid on tight, but careful not to crack it. I have had operators say that, well, I've given it that extra tightness, and then they broke the lid. So make sure that it's on tight, but don't break it. Some water may overflow when the lid is tightened, which is typical. Put the cap directly on the top. You want to make sure that you don't scrape off the meniscus. Tip, if you cannot get a meniscus, you can add a little sample to the lid, flip that lid over, and cap it. So carefully turn over your vial and check for air bubbles. If an air bubble is present larger than the size of a pea, then continue to add drops of water until there are no more air bubbles. Do not dump out the sample and start over. Tap the sides again to release any trapped air bubbles. And again, sometimes it is what it is. If you have a lot of water or air in that water, just do your best to get it filled up with no headspace at all, that dome, and cross your fingers. This is an example of a water sample that would not be analyzed. The air bubble is bigger than the size of a pea. And it's very important for VOCs and THMs that they cannot have headspace. The reason is that they can dissipate into that air bubble. And the whole point of it is we want to be able to analyze for any of those VOC compounds in our sample. But if they volatilize into that air that's present, we're not going to be able to provide proper data. So disinfection byproducts, or DBPs, are the 557s and the 524 THMs. The bottle orders sets for your DBPs are 4 for the 4 vials of ammonia chloride preserved vials. Those are good for 14 days. And 3 of the 524 THM vials. Again, those you'll get the little vial or the HCl dropper too. So make sure that you don't forget to get those field preservatives in there as well. For compliance reporting, these are some notes of just to ensure that you have all the proper data. The site ID is a 01A, 02A, etc. And physical address. For volatile organic compounds, that's the larger drinking water compound report. And this will come with travel blanks. So I know that there's a little bit of confusion with, well, travel blank, trip blank, field blank, temp blank. So travel blanks and trip blanks are essentially the same thing. They just go for a ride in the cooler with your sample containers to the source of where you're collecting your sample, and then they come back with the sample to the laboratory. The whole purpose are for travel blank and trip blanks. Those are there to protect you from what you're reporting. For instance, if the laboratory here gets a detection for like acetone in your volatile organic compound report, we're then going to, or for any detection for that matter of any VOC, then we're going to take the travel blank that followed around with you. You don't open those or anything, they just stay sealed up. We'll take those travel blank and analyze them. If we have a detection for that same compound that had a detect in the sample, then we can say, hey, client, there was a contamination, rather than report this compound for compliance. So they're there to protect you. So make sure that when you have a bottle order arrive, and sometimes we're providing bottle orders for like SOC sets. You might receive those a couple weeks before you're actually doing your sample collections. If you see on the box or the cooler, the sticker, the green sticker that says refrigerate travel blanks upon receipt, open up your bottle order, pull those travel blanks out, put them in your laboratory refrigerator. What that will do is it'll help avoid bubble formation. So by keeping them cold, we'll keep those from developing air bubbles. Because in the same sense, if they're back in the laboratory, we've tested your sample, we want to, and we had a detect, we're going to test the travel blank. If the travel blank has developed an air bubble that's bigger than the size of a pea, which has not been opened, then we can't analyze that. So that's why there are 2 of them. So, hopefully if one did develop air bubbles, then we have the other one to test. But we have discovered that by keeping them refrigerated does help reduce any bubble formation. So when we are testing for 524 THMs, those are disinfection byproducts: bromodichloromethane, bromoform, chloroform, dibromochloromethane. Those are your total THMs. If we have chlorination for disinfection, we're expecting to see those. So if you're doing your 524 THMs, you don't get your travel blanks. Going now on to PFAS sampling and testing. So the UCMR 5 covered, well, it started in 2023 and it's going to go through 2025. There's pretty big scope of small systems and large systems. Everyone essentially over 10,000 is required to do the UCMR testing. And what that is let me go on to here. There's 25 PFAS compounds that come out of method 533, and there are 4 PFAS compounds that come out of EPA method 537. So there's 2 different methods for PFAS that we have to utilize to cover the UCMR 5. It's also testing for the metal lithium. UCMR is an unregulated contaminant monitoring role to determine if we need to set MCLs for compounds down the road. When we are testing for, well, and then to go back to that, due to the UCMR's past data, in years past when we initially did PFAS testing, now we have a PFAS MCL. So drinking water systems, there's some PFAS prohibited and acceptable items when we are going to sample for PFAS. Essentially, being an aseptic sampler is going to be the best thing I can suggest. Keeping to natural products. You want to avoid using any type of repellent the day of going to sample or any repellent type clothing. For the PFAS kits that are provided, they do come with a set of instructions for preparation for sampling. They come with nitrile gloves in the sample kits. So don't use the blue lab gloves that you might have. Utilize the non-nitrile gloves that are in these kits. Just make sure that you are an aseptic sampler, clean, tidy, ready to sample. You've disinfected the tap, let it flush really well. The sample containers themselves, you might have 2 or 3, and there's a field blank. The hold times for the 533 method is 28 and 14 days for 537. Temperature requirements are a little unique for these PFAS for UCMR. Essentially, just try to get them to the laboratory within 48 hours of sample collection, because then they just need to be less than 10 degrees Celsius. However, if they're received after 48 hours of sample collection, they need to be less than 2 degrees Celsius, which is nice and cold in that ice. No ice packs at all, because those can cause contamination. A field blank, you can see on this picture, we do want to fill them up to the neck, the sample containers. There's a 250 line on the bottle, but you don't want to go there. You want to go up to the neck. A field blank is out in the field where you're collecting samples. Because this is in nanograms per liter, it's such a minute amount that we are sampling for that we want to ensure that there's not contamination from the environment or from ourselves from sampling. So a field blank 1 is filled up with non-PFAS DI water. Then you have field blank number 2, it's just an empty bottle. All you're going to do is transfer that field blank 1 into the empty bottle. And essentially you're thinking that if I'm going to have a contamination in my sample, then I'm picking it up when I transfer that field blank. And that will protect me if I do have a sample detect that hopefully it was picked up in that, if it was a contamination, that I would pick it up in that field blank. For PFAS regulation history, you can see in 2016, it used to be a sum, an addition of 2 compounds, and that was 70. In June of 22, they had some health advisory levels that were way below what the environmental laboratory instrumentation could go down to. So I was happy to see in 2023 that they were proposing 4.0 nanograms per liter for PFOA and PFAS. So breaking news, in April 2024 this year, we have maximum contaminant limits, 4.0 parts per trillion, which is also nanograms per liter for PFOA and PFAS, 10 for some of these others that are listed. And that would wrap up my sample brief laboratory tour sampling training for different sample containers. If anybody wants this presentation, you can email me as well, and I can always email it to you. So are there any questions?
We do have a couple of questions in here for you, Marcy. First, we see, will you speak to completing the chain of custody when holding in a refrigerator, specifically for BACT samples?
Okay, so if you're bringing the sample to a lockbox, you will sign that it's in the lockbox. So lockbox or cooler or refrigerator is accepting it at that time. Does that make sense?
Perfect. I will follow up if there's more questions there. And one more question, please state again the proper bleach to use for the sampling tap.
Well, I've said chlorine before, but I've been told, well, chlorine, when you do the disinfection or add chlorine, that's more the chemical. They say like a household bleach, chlorine, that type of bleach is what you want to use.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marcy. If anyone has more questions, you can keep sending those in. But that is what we have for today for our Drinking Water Rule Review webinar here. Thank you very much again, everyone, for joining us today. Of course, once again, check out the handouts section if you can see it there for those PDHs. Operators, you'll need to download the agenda at the very least for those PDHs to submit to your OpsCert profile. And if you do not see the handouts there, no worries. We will be sending out a share file here pretty shortly that will have a lot of the slides from today, as well as that agenda. As you can see here, our OpsCert program contacts, that's the phone and email address where you can find us if you have any questions pertaining to the OpsCert program. We are happy to help you out. But if that is all of the questions I am seeing here today, thank you again for joining us. I'll leave the webinar open here just for a couple of minutes, but you are all free to go. Thank you very much. Thanks again, everyone. I'll be ending the webinar now.